Wait, that's a baby. It was a simple day in fall, and as always, Nezu's day started with a cup of tea while he watched over UA. After all, he was the principal of UA, and he needed to make sure the safety of the school was in tip-top shape before the school day started. He was enjoying the pleasant taste of lemon and honey chamomile tea while looking at the security cameras surrounding the UA building. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. The training areas were clear, the cafeteria was empty, the basket outside UA gates, the faculty. Wait a minute. Nezu looked over yet again at the camera showing the view outside if the UA gates. Yes, that is indeed a basket. A woven straw basket with a light green blanket covering the top, but there seemed to be slight movement underneath the blanket. Nezu jumped from his chair with a certain amount of difficulty since his height provided a bit of time to be taken getting up from it. Honestly, he thought he ordered it with the smaller height. Once his feet touched the ground of his office, he headed straight to the front of the UA gates. Once he got there, he lifted the blanket, expecting exactly what he saw. A baby. A young human baby with curly green and black hair. The baby opened his eyes at the light that was blocked by the soft blanket, letting out a soft cry from the brightness of the sun. His emerald green eyes peered up at the principal before cooing slightly and reaching for him with his chubby little hands. Nezu crouches down and picks up the baby gently from the basket, and now the baby is closer, he can indeed see the freckles that speckled his round little face. The baby's body was dressed in a very old-looking gray onesie that didn't look to provide much warmth. Taking his eyes away from the baby, he looks back down at the blanket to find any clue of why he was abandoned. Sure enough, there was a tiny letter that was under the blanket. Nezu, while holding the baby safely, opened the letter to read the contents of what reason a human would just abandon a perfectly innocent baby. The baby looked around calmly while in his steady hold, clutching at his red tie while he started to read. Hello to whoever is reading this. I couldn't handle raising a baby without his mother. She died in childbirth. When the baby was given to me, I couldn't handle the responsibility combined with the grief of the loss of my love. I tried my best for the past 2 months to love him, but I can't give him a life that he deserves. Please take care of him and love him. When he is old enough, tell him I am sorry for not being strong enough for him. His name is Izuku. His mother gave it to him. There was no signature at the bottom. Well, Nezu thought as he looked down at the baby. The baby, having noticed the principal was looking at him, let go of the tie he was chewing on to smile at him. At least they're cute. Hello, I found this baby outside of my school and I am adopting him as mine, Nezu tells Detective Tsukachi as he sits down in the chair with help from a step stool at the police station. Was a baby cradled in his arms. The father abandoned them because he couldn't handle being a father. Tsukachi read the note over before sighing. I am assuming you came here with the note for me to track down the father. Nezu said with a smile, of course, only to charge him with child abandonment because I won't allow him a single chance to be near this child. No father should ever abandon their child no matter their grief. Tsukachi smiled softly. I am also assuming you would like some adoption papers to make the adoption official. Nezu said happily, yes, I am taking Izuku as my own. The baby, hearing his name, stirred from his nap to peer up at Nezu. Nezu looked down and smiled when the baby smiled happily at him. Izuku's bright green eyes blinked from the lights, his fists clenched softly onto the blanket around him. Tsukachi shook his head with fondness. That kid will be loved by your staff more than you could know. He is probably going to have a lot of people wrapped around his finger. I wouldn't blame them for growing an attachment to him. My son will be shown the love and care that he deserves. And if anyone doesn't agree, then I wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson, Nezu ended with a sadistic smile. God help whoever gets on Nezu's bad side by harming Izuku in any way, Tsukachi thought while getting the adoption papers and documents put together for the intelligent animal. He glanced over as Nezu smiled when Izuku grabbed onto his paw with a gurgled laugh. But there is no doubt that kid will be the death of us all if he is even half as smart as Nezu. Nezu watched as Izuku looked around his office, making soft noises each time he would be interested in something he saw. He was especially interested in the bookshelf with the many colors he saw on the spines. After his trip to the police station, he went to gather materials needed for human infants. The detective gave him a list of needed items that Bobby's really needed to get. He got the most important items like diapers, milk, pacifiers, bottles, and a crib before he ventured on to toys, clothes, and other things he knew Izuku would like. After gathering a multitude of items, he went back to his office right as the teachers were heading to their homeroom class. Thankfully, no issues happened when he was gone. He left most of his items in his car since it wasn't logical to bring out all the items into his office. He filled a grocery bag with necessary items such as an onesie, a pacifier, a wrap for him to hold Izuku, formula milk, a bottle, and a diaper or two just in case something happened. He changed Izuku into an onesie to finally get him something else other than the ragged old gray onesie he had under his green blanket wrap. He held Izuku in front of him to look at his new child. Oh, what else could Izuku need? Bobbies need a lot of items, and especially when they grow up. He knows he has to buy a lot of diapers, but what else does he need? His thoughts of what he needed to acquire were interrupted by a smell. He twitched his nose before recoiling away from the source, which happened to be Izuku. With careful thinking, he requested help from two of his students to help deal with the problem at hand. He knew that these two have some experience with children. Since Tensei was absent today, he handpicked two students he knew were responsible enough to take care of Izuku and to deal with the problem. A certain problem he can't deal with alone. A diaper change. Why do you think Nezu called us to his office? Oh God, do you think he found out about that one time me, you and Tensei got banned from the supermarket? He can't possibly expel us on that, can he? Hisashi asked loudly to his friend, who looked quite done with the conversation already. I don't think he will expel us just because we got banned from one place. At least I hope not, Aizawa thought as he continues talking to his classmate. At most, he would just be calling us over to his office to discuss something to do with school or something. They both walked on to the principal's office. Aizawa did more of the walking while he dragged the scared Hisashi behind him. Aizawa went to knock on the door before he heard, "Ah, Aizawa and Yamada, come on in," Nezu said through the door. Aizawa opened the door while Hisashi was standing behind him, shivering slightly from the uneasiness of Nezu's quirk, although they both straightened up when they saw the confusing sight before them. Nezu was holding a baby. Nezu's paws indeed contained a green blanket-trapped baby in what appeared to be a mint green bear onesie that reminded Hisashi of one of the cartoons he watches with his nieces. The baby looked away from Nezu to the two strangers and did his best to move his hand toward them with a stuffed mouse held tightly between his fingers. Aizawa and Hisashi thought at the same time, what in the hell? Hello students, as you can see I have come to be a parent on short notice, but I need your help with something I have never had to deal with before in the line of my work. Nezu started while he lifted up the child slightly. You see, I have no clue how to change a baby's diaper, so I gathered you two since I know you two have experience with acting with small children such as Izuku, and I know you two are the most capable of doing so. Aizawa stared quietly at the baby as the child, Izuku, stared right back. Hisashi was relieved that he and his friends weren't in trouble and that he can do something he knew he was good with. Hisashi gulped back his disgust as he remembered how bad the smell can be before heading towards the baby. Izuku startled out of Aizawa's gaze to look at the young man with bright yellow hair. Izuku immediately was interested in the bright color and started to reach toward his head. Hisashi smiled at the cuteness overload that was the small child before carefully bending down and gathering the young child into his arms, taking him to the corner of the room to get changed. Nezu and Aizawa stayed back as Hisashi broke down the steps of dealing with a dirty diaper, all the while changing Izuku efficiently. Aizawa was plugging his nose from the smell as Nezu still kept a smile on his face as he nodded along to Hisashi's instructions. Aizawa also added his own advice since he babysits for his next-door neighbor, adding advice like make sure they're entertained or else they will go anywhere else to find it, and I mean anywhere. He then continued with a short story of how he prevented a small 1-year-old from crawling under a fence in a garden. Before long, Izuku had a fresh, clean diaper with the old one going straight in the trash. When it was all done, Hisashi scratched Izuku's stomach, which in return made Izuku giggle before carefully handing the baby back to his principal. Thank you so much for both of your help and insight toward taking care of Izuku, Nezu said as he set Izuku down in his floor crib because the baby seemed to automatically fall asleep after getting his diaper change. Aizawa nodded softly, still looking at the baby as Hisashi winged his hands together. Hisashi asked carefully, would it be okay if we checked in on Izuku, just in case you need help? Nezu smiled more genuinely and said, of course, as long as it doesn't harm your grades, by all means you can come in and drop by. Aizawa looked slightly relieved as Hisashi smiled brightly, thank you. They both continued to the door and was about to shut it behind them as Nezu spoke up from his seat. And let this be forgiveness on that stunt you pulled with Ida Tensei's Quirk in the supermarket last week. Aizawa and Hisashi both froze and nodded blankly before closing the door. The friends seemed to walk slowly back to their class as Hisashi said what both of them were thinking. How does he always know? From behind the door of the office, Nezu laughs behind his cup of tea. Nezu doesn't play around with rumors. Nezu is so done with humans. Maybe not all of them, but only the really annoying ones. It has been that long since Nezu had adopted little Izuku into his personal life. He enlisted his students Hisashi Yamada and Aizawa Shoto to help with figuring out how to become a good parent over the small child. After successfully filling out the official paperwork and dealing with the social workers directly, he officially has Izuku as his son. It did take some convincing, but Izuku is now his to call his own offspring. Detective Tsukachi, who he put in charge of finding the father and convicting him of child abandonment, called him only a few days after he took Izuku under his wing to tell him that the father had come willingly into the prison. All was going great. He even got more things for Izuku to play with. Speaking of Izuku, he personally cleaned up his guest room, which was easy because no one even volunteered to go over to his place. So he took the empty room and made it Izuku's child room. He placed a new crib that was white with intricate flowers engraved into the wood against the wall closest to the door. The empty dresser was filled to the brim with onesies, diapers, socks, blankets, shoes, shirts, pants, and some animal-themed hooded towels he recently brought home. Nezu had a changing station with a trash can right next to it for easy disposal. The play area consisted of fluffy circle rugs with many soft stuffed animals thrown about. He has a stationary jumper and activity gym when he grows a little bigger in the corner. But his favorite addition was the rocking cradle that was soft ivory with a plush inside that he used to rock Izuku to sleep. Nezu knows what it was like to feel alone and abandoned by humans, so he made a vow to never let that happen. He created a school for everyone to be safe, and now he has a baby who deserves the love and cares that he wasn't shown. Same with his office. He still had the first crib he bought right next to his desk to keep an eye on Izuku while he slept while he went over his work. He had a few changes of clothes and diapers in his office in case there was an accident. He allowed a soft rug to be placed down on his hardwood office floor to allow Izuku to roam free. Of course, the baby proofed the whole room before he even let him down from the crib first. He allowed a multitude of pillows, blankets, and stuffed animals around to keep his office from being too boring for Izuku. In short, Nezu was a proud dad. Until the students somehow heard Izuku's cries of laughter outside his office and automatically went to gossip about how Nezu had a child now. Safe to say, if he ever finds the specific person who did it, there will be hell to pay for unintentionally putting his innocent child in danger. Speaking of students, he has to tell them he has a child so they can finally let it go. Nezu gains to plan a short assembly indoors so that the whole school could attend. "Hey, Aizawa," Hisashi whisper yelled to his dark-haired friend who was resting his head in his desk. "What do you think Nezu will do about the whole rumor thing? Now everyone knows about the kid." "Lower your voice, Hisashi, or else everyone will know it's not a rumor," Aizawa said, looking up to his friend from his desk. "Nezu will probably just announce it so that the rumor can go away and he can go back to being in silent peace. Like Aizawa wishes he had right now, but ever since the rumor started, everyone has been buzzing with whispers throughout the days." "Hey, guys," the two friends looked over at their friend Ida Tensei as he walked over to them with his lunch bento wrapped up in a light blue bow. He sat down near them before continuing on. "Everyone's been going on about just a rumor. I honestly don't care about rumors and only wait for the truth." "Oh please, we all know the Pat if it was true, you would want the first look at the little munchkin Ida." The three looked over to see their only female friend Nimuri Kayama. She pranced up to them with her long black hair coming down in beach waves. "I wouldn't mind taking a look at his baby if he had one, but everyone is going crazy over a stupid rumor. Geez, even if it was true, they don't have to talk about how Nezu would be a bad dad. Personally, he wouldn't be bad, but maybe just very protective." She shook her head distastefully before sitting down near them with her own purple bento. Aizawa and Hisashi didn't really want to tell their friends about the baby without Nezu's permission, because knowing them, they would declare themselves the honorary aunt and uncle of the baby even if they haven't even met them yet. Just when Aizawa was thinking about what to do about the situation, the intercom came on. "Oh no," Aizawa and Hisashi thought at the same time while their friends and the rest of their classmates looked confused. "Attention all students and teachers, report to the inside gymnasium for a special announcement regarding some news I have." Oh hell, Aizawa thought as Nezu's voice continued on through the speaker. Please start from the upperclassmen down to the freshmen in a calm and orderly manner. Nimuri looked very interested in the announcement. Oh ho, what happens if he is about to lay a smackdown on the kid who started the rumor? Tensei shook his head as they gathered with their class walking toward the gym. I doubt that. I don't think the principal would do such a thing over a rumor. It's more within his power to unleash his anger toward that student when the teachers go against the student in those battles. They all shivered as they remembered how Nezu gets when he unleashes high specs. With the speedy time of 10 minutes, all the class was gathered in the school gymnasium waiting for whatever the principal had to tell them. They honestly didn't know if this was just a normal school assembly that just wasn't scheduled or an abnormal meeting that was about to rock their whole world up. And apparently it was the latter when Nezu showed up with tea in one hand and a baby cradled against him in the other. Needless to say, everyone freaked out. Attention students, it has come to my attention that a rumor has spread about me having a child in my office. I don't really know why you would think I would kidnap a child, but I will let you know that I would do no such thing. I found this baby and I have adopted him as my own. He was abandoned just outside the school gates a week ago. I took it upon myself to raise him as my own, and I will have no such tolerance towards any behavior of this sort any longer. If you have any suspicion towards me and how I raise my child, say it to my face instead of gossiping behind the closed office door. If you have any problem with that, speak now. Nezu said with no trace of a pleasant smile present on his face as Izuku looked up at him with curious eyes. Izuku was wearing a blue onesie with a light brown baby deer that was smelling a pink rose. His little feet were covered by white socks which were embroidered with pink cherry blossoms. In his little hands, he held a small light brown teddy bear that's left ear was currently being chewed on lightly. God, Nezu looks like one of the moms you would see at a PTA meeting, Aizawa thought as Hisashi looked on with a smile. Tensei and Nimuri looked ready to claim their honorary aunt and uncle titles as soon as Nezu stops talking. Will there be any further questions on how I raise my son? Nezu looked on towards the silent crowd. Great, there will be no issues then. Nezu continued, if there are any further drama or gossip about my skills in parenthood, don't think I will extend any mercy towards you just because you are my student. Punishment is not that far out of reach since my school is meant to be a safe place free of discrimination. Nezu ended with a sadistic smile. I believe there will be no further problems, yes. The resounding yes from the crowd of students was so loud Nezu plugged Izuku's ears ahead of time. Nezu sipped his tea as he spoke from the podium. This issue of gossiping brings up a real topic regarding the offspring of pro-heroes. I will see to it personally that everyone become more educated on this topic with your teachers to help you understand the importance, Nezu added. The mic from the podium picked up on Izuku's soft sound as he played with the teddy bear in his hands while Nezu took another long sip of his tea. Nezu smiled at the gathered crowd before ending with, you are all dismissed to your classrooms now, except for you, Yukimura. The student in question, who some remembered as the one who spread the rumor, trembled in his seat. Do stay behind, would you? I need to talk to you personally about the 10-page essay you will write about the importance of the truth and how lies can spread into something more heinous. An easy assignment compared to the other punishments that I had in my head. You are lucky that I am letting you off easy this time. Never do something like this again unless you want to face harsher punishment, Nezu said smiling as he felt Izuku giggling from his perch against the young principal's chest. Izuku wiggled his stuffed animal in his hand before taking the other ear into his mouth. Most students said a quick prayer for Yukimura while the quartet of friends just shook their heads at him. Geez, he is a second year too. You would think he would know better than to go toe-to-toe against Nezu, Tensei said offhandedly as they all walked back to their classroom. Just serves him right. He shouldn't have done it in the first place, Aizawa stated as he internally sighed that Tensei and Nimuri didn't find out about the connection between him and Hisashi already acting like his godparents. Haha, I wouldn't want to be him right now, and hey, I was right about him laying a smackdown on the kid who started the whole thing, Nimuri said proudly before smiling fondly, and that baby was so cute. I wonder if Nezu will allow us to bring gifts for the little boy. Yeah, I wouldn't be against giving the little fella a few more stuffed animals, Tensei commented. The other three knew that since his little brother was born, he was dying to let loose big brother instincts, and since there is a new baby in town, he will pull out all the stops. The day after the assembly, things were pretty much back to normal. except for Yukimura, who looks thoroughly awake and asleep at the same time while carrying a multitude of books from the public library from class to class. And as always, Aizawa and Hisashi were in the middle of math when there is a knock on the door. They both slowly stopped their writing to look at the door. Tensei and Nimuri pause in their work as well as the other two as the whole class turns to look at the door. The door opens to show Nezu with a baby swaddled in a hands-free scarf attached to the principal's front, with the principal smiling with car keys in his hand. I need to enlist the help of Aizawa and Hisashi on an emergency trip regarding Izuku since I have enlisted them as the godparent guardians, Nezu said as Izuku looked around at the scenery of the classroom. What? The whole class shouted, but the most significant was Nimuri and Tensei. The two friends look at each other and sighed before following their principal out of the school building. The two looked thoroughly confused with what was happening as their principal led them to his car, which was styled after one of the earlier models of a Volkswagen Beetle. Principal Nezu, where exactly are we going? Hisashi asked carefully as the teacher climbed up into the car to help buckle Izuku in the backseat in his dark green car seat. The principal only smiled at him before shutting the backseat door behind him and maneuvering on top of the center console to get to his own spot in the driver's seat. He adjusted the setting to bring him close to the pedals, made sure his mirrors were in order, and made sure Izuku was safe in the back. He rolled down the passenger window slowly to face his two students with the only answer that makes sense in this situation. Nezu only smiled happily as he called out, "Get in, losers, we're going shopping." Nezu needs sleep, no more caffeinated tea. Nezu was fine with no sleep. Yeah, nothing wrong with losing a little sleep, especially when it was because of Izuku. There was no harm about staying awake another hour or two rocking him to sleep in his cradle. No biggie on reading a bedtime story when Izuku wakes up at 2:00 in the morning. Surely no foul about him constantly worry about Izuku getting hurt because he is in his crawling stage and wants to head butted everything he see. Nope, no problem that this has been going on for a few days. No problem at all, Nezu thinks as he looks down on Izuku on the floor crib in his office. He was wearing an old-school superhero-themed onesie with a soft cape attached to it with green and white being its main colors. It took so long until Izuku had tired enough to go to sleep. First off, he woke up to crying in the middle of early morning, which was easily fixed by a quick bottle of warm milk and some walking around while patting his back until he burped. He woke up again to his alarm, which caused him to wake up Izuku when he was immediately greeted with a smile and the smell of death coming from his diaper. After the diaper change, he got his work suitcase and Izuku's baby bag ready before he was greeted by a wail from Izuku. He looked down to see Izuku trying to clutch his head from the small pain he experienced from bumping his forehead into the only not baby-proof spot in his house. He swooped down to take the crying child in his arms while bouncing him slightly, shushing him quietly while rubbing his back with his other hand. From that fiasco on to the next, when he was halfway to work when he realized he left not only Izuku's favorite toy that he couldn't possibly fall asleep without, but also his paperwork that he finished from last night. Nezu had to drive all the way back, pick up the items, and then wiggle back into the driver's seat before heading double time to UA. Which reminds him of the apology letter he needs to write to that poor electrician who was having just a lovely day before he stormed into him. Safe to say, he might need to send some compensation from the utter scare he caused the worker to experience. And Nezu would think that at least at work he would be safe. Oh, how the universe really hate him sometimes. Nezu had to deal with a supposed gas leak that needed to be fixed fast, only for the professionals to show up and say it was just overheated water that somehow intersected with the garbage disposal smell, which made their pay double because they were only supposed to fix a leak, not fix up a whole system of pipes. And then he had to deal with the electric company calling about how he apparently traumatized one of their workers. He talked down their whole lawsuit thing pretty quickly, but that meant he really needed to put compensation in his apology letter to pay for a few therapy lessons. Then he had to go through paperwork, which was always so fun to deal with. Then for a moment there was peace and calm in his office for once in the past 4 hours since he woke up from his nearly non-existent sleep. For a split second he thought, hey, this is nice. He was instantly shocked out of that thought since he saw Izuku head toward the bookshelf, which would have been fine until he realized the snow globe he bought while he was in one of his very few vacations was a little too close to the edge. He rushed over as soon as Izuku slightly bumped into it. Good news, he caught the globe. Bad news is Izuku is crying again. Nezu bit back his inner turmoil into a smile as he picked up Izuku and settled him down. This incident caused him to completely stop his work to watch as Izuku literally avoided every single safe space he saw and headed toward any dangerous spots he could see. It was like he was a danger magnet. 2 hours later, Izuku finally went asleep after eating his applesauce. Lunchtime, Nezu thought as he remembered about the students in the school and looked down at the papers before him with sad eyes, before turning his attention back to his self-bought #1 dad cup. "I wish I knew how to quit you," Nezu said, smiling at his teacup with his 5th cup of caffeinated Earl Grey, which he quickly chugged before continuing with the endless amount of paperwork. He peeked over at Izuku's sleeping form, silently wishing for him to stay just like that for a while. "I still can't believe Nezu took you guys shopping in the middle of class," Nimiri said, pouting as she picked some pork with her chopsticks. "It was less shopping with us and more using us as help to shop for Izuku," Hisashi said, smiling softly. "It was more of us reaching the places he couldn't get to than anything else," Hisashi thought to himself. The shopping trip itself was eventful, especially when everyone saw 2 high school students with their principal carrying a baby across his chest as he dragged the two towards the baby section. He took some of their advice while picking certain foods and drinks that was helpful toward a baby's growth. But of course, when they arrived back in time for lunchtime, their 2 other friends took one look at them and started to hammer them with questions, which made Hisashi pull the oldest trick in the book. Hisashi pointed behind them, said, "Hey, what's over there?" before taking off with such speed even Tensei couldn't stand a chance. Well, he technically could chase after him, but they had Aizawa with them, which was all they really needed to begin their interrogation. "How long have you known?" Nimiri asked. "The same day he found him," Aizawa responds. "How come you didn't tell us?" Tensei followed up. "It was a private secret between the principal and us. If we would have told you, all 4 of us will probably have the same punishment that Yukishima had to go through," Aizawa said, with his dark eyes looked more bored with every word. Nimiri questioned, "How do we get on this?" "What do you want to?" Aizawa asked. "Why wouldn't we?" Tensei answered. "Look, I'm a great older brother to Tenya, so I can definitely help out the most with how to take care of kids like Izuku because he is around the same age of Tenya. I'm sure that I can help out. I will do it in any way that I can." Aizawa looked to Nimiri to find out her answer. "I always wanted to spoil a kid by being the coolest aunt, and Izuku looks like he deserves to be spoiled, especially by the most awesome aunt that he could ever have." At the end of their little interrogation, they decided amongst themselves to try to let Nezu make them the honorary aunt and uncle. So here the 2 were, having sneaked up to his office after they finished their lunch. "So what do we do to convince him to make us part of the whole family?" Tensei asked quietly to Nimiri as they both walked toward the office door. "I don't really know. I'm hoping he could just give us babysitter privileges and at least allow us to give him a few gifts. And then sooner or later we will be the cool influences on him," Nimiri answered him before reaching out to knock. "I know it's you 2, come on in," Nezu answered, but he sounded tired. The 2 looked at each other before opening the door to his office, only to gape at the utter mess on the floor. A pile of books that looked like they fell from the bookshelf to the ground, and stuffed animals were strewn all over the room. Izuku was babbling from his crib, all the while their principal had his head down in his arms sitting at his office desk. "What brings you 2 here?" Nezu said, with his head still resting within his paws. Izuku gurgled a greeting happily from his crib as his limbs flailed a little bit towards them. Shocked out of the silence, Tensei cleared his throat. "Well, we were both wondering if you would consider us being an aunt and uncle to Izuku." "We don't even have to have that certain title," Nimiri continued on. "We just want to give him little gifts and maybe babysit once in a while if you are willing." Nezu lifted his head. "Why would I let you sit on Izuku?" No, babysit just means watching over a baby while the parent goes away for some time," Tensei explained, fearing what Nezu would do. Nezu lifted his head full from his paws and looked at Izuku. He looked back at his student. "If I agree, would that mean you will take care of Izuku while I rest?" "Well, yeah," Nimiri started. "Yes," Nezu said, smiling, "you 2 can look over Izuku after school today, but you need Hisashi and Aizawa to assist since Izuku is already familiar with them." "Great, it's settled that you will watch over him after school." "Fantastic." Nimuri and Tensei stared for a moment at the pure joy their principal had on his face, or was it his sadistic joy that he uses when he gets a chance at fighting the students during the teacher battle exams? Either way, they succeeded in getting to have the cute child all to themselves. Muahaha. We won't let you down, sir, Tensei started before exiting the office with Nimuri next to him. Nezu smiled as he could already guess what was going to happen when they would look over his little angel. Oh, this is going to be fun, Nezu said, smiling at Izuku, which gladly earned him a smile back. I can't believe you talked us into this, Aizawa blankly said as he, Hisashi, Nimuri, and Tensei headed to Nezu's house. Apparently, after offering one of their houses for the babysitting, he refused and offered up his own since Izuku was more familiar with the layout. It was less talking and more dragging us into their own scheme, Hisashi muttered to Aizawa as they followed behind the obviously too happy of a pair. They arrived at the door for it to open with Nezu holding Izuku before they even had a chance to knock. Nezu had an overnight bag held in his right arm with Izuku in his left. Nezu handed Izuku to Tensei before waving his little paw goodbye at Izuku. I'll be back soon, my little mouse, Nezu whispered to the curly-haired child before he turned to his students. I have all the materials inside. There is a list of his schedule and where things are located. I left some money for you four to get pizza. If there is an emergency, don't call me, I know what will happen before it does. There are several instructions for each task, no problems, you four have fun. Stay out of my room, I will know if there was any attempt to cross into it, Nezu explained before walking off toward the elevator. When Hisashi was watching his principal walk down the hall, he noticed his different attire. Instead of a suit and tie, he had on a rather casual white shirt with black jeans. No, wait, those were still his dress pants. Curious over why, Hisashi asked out to Nezu, Hey, what are you doing when we watch Izuku? Are you going to go watch a movie or something? Oh goodness no, I'm going to find the road to El Dorado. What on earth do you think I'm doing? I'm going to sleep, Nezu said over his shoulder before turning the corner toward the elevator. The four were stunned at his response before looking down at the child they were supposed to look after for what seemed like overnight. Thank God they had nothing planned and for the fact that tomorrow they were off of school. The four pairs of eyes looked down at the small child smiling. This will be so much fun. After about 2 hours of watching Disney movies and eating pizza, Aizawa decided to check off certain tasks on checklist. Let's see, Izuku has already had his bottle. He already had a bath, a diaper change, and his meal of mashed baby foods. We already had dinner, so let's clean up before getting ready for our next task. Aizawa stated, already picking up the empty pizza boxes and throwing them in the trash. His friends followed his actions since Izuku was distracted with Cinderella. They all went to the kitchen as Izuku bounced happily upon seeing the mice fix up Cinderella's dress. He was soft aqua onesie with an embroidered koi fish on his chest. In his hands was a small sloth plushie that Izuku hugged tightly to himself as the pink dress was being made by the army of kind mice. Okay, our last thing is getting Izuku ready for bed. He said that we might need to play with him for a little while before Izuku either gets tired from loss of energy or bored, Aizawa said, looking at his friends. That seems simple enough, Nimuri said as she cracked her knuckles. As Aizawa looked back at the paper, seeming to notice a little note Nezu made a red pen, he looked at the note and paled. Remember not to leave Izuku alone for even the tiniest of time. He is in his crawling phase and seemingly loves to hide. I think it happened when I showed him that one Disney movie with the mice making that dress. It seems he loves to pretend to be the mice, which is adorable when you think about it, but not when he disappears. Aizawa immediately rushed over to the couch in the living room, leaving his confused friends behind. The three friends heard angry shout of "Son of a biscuit!" and rushed over to find an annoyed Aizawa and an empty couch. The three friends were freaked out as Aizawa remained the leader. You know, the leader, supposed to remain calm in these kinds of situations. Find Izuku before we get killed, Aizawa yelled at them. Aizawa took to the living room, Hisashi checked Izuku's bedroom, Tensei checked out the 2 bathrooms, and Nimuri checked the kitchen. There was no sight of him. He has got to be around here somewhere. Check the lists and see if he said anything about where Izuku lives to be or something like that, Nimuri said as she pointed to Tensei to check the lists that Nezu left behind. There is nothing about his favorite place to hide, It just says his favorite food and toy, and he already took his favorite stuffed animal with him. There is no way to bait him out. Even if we got the food, he will still be full from earlier, Tensei answered with a clutched list in his hand. The only place we haven't checked is Nezu's room, but it is still locked, so there is no way he is in there, Hisashi said, looking scared at the fact they might have lost Izuku. Let's check the rooms again. I'll take Izuku's room, Hisashi take the kitchen, Nimuri you look in the bathrooms again, and Tensei takes the living room. Leave no space unchecked. Open up cabinets and closets. We have to find him before he hurts himself, Aizawa said, rushing over to Izuku's room. The other three friends were filling with dread as they looked at each place they could find. There was no signs he had been in the bathrooms or kitchen at all, and their only trace in the living room if the fact he was there last time they saw him. They were losing hope and gaining fear as they thought that maybe they would have to check Nezu's room. I found him, Aizawa said as he looked inside Izuku's closet. Izuku's closet was open, but no one checked inside to see that Izuku had crawled his way to the back of the closet where there was a pile of soft blankets. Izuku had crawled from the living room to his own bedroom to go to sleep. Aizawa smiled at the headache-inducing baby as they softly breathed in a deep slumber. Aizawa picked him up gently before carrying him to his crib. Thankfully, Izuku hadn't woken up. The three teenagers showed up at the door, saw Izuku sleeping, and fell to the ground exhausted. I haven't had a scare like that since, ever actually, Tensei said, lying on the ground, looking up at the painted ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars. Yeah, Nimuri and Hisashi agreed as they yawned. I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on Izuku from this chair, Aizawa said slowly as he slumped down in the padded rocking chair overlooking the crib. It was a bit small with his tall figure, but he made it work, his head resting against his shoulder as sleep overtook him. Nezu was smiling at the sight before him with a well-rested mind. The four teenagers had passed out from the overexertion from chasing Izuku around the house. Their bodies were all around the crib, so Nezu made sure to step carefully toward Izuku. Izuku was wide awake, so when he saw his papa he reached out his hands toward him. He smiled, took the child from the crib before carefully moving around the bodies once again. He paused at the door. Sleep tight, children, Nezu said, smiling at the four passed-out teenagers before exiting Izuku's room with a giggling Izuku slightly bouncing in his arm. I wonder how long it will take them to notice that Izuku's closet that has a mini passageway to my room, Nezu thought with a smiling Izuku staring up at him. He tickled Izuku's belly slightly, which made him giggle up at Nezu with bright eyes. Where the heck is the teething toy? Nezu was to attend a meeting with all the principals of the hero school in Japan in less than a day. Normally, he would just go to the meeting normally, but since he had his new baby to take care of, all his normal plans and schedules has gone out the window to care for his little mouse, which is more fitting because he dressed Izuku in a white mouse onesie today with pink socks. He loved the fact he could dress up his son in any onesie he wanted to. Next time, maybe a small tuxedo so they can have matching formal wear. Nezu kindly embraced the crawling stage by giving him that onesie, and now after some time, Izuku had let up on his crawling adventures to just crawl over to his toys now. The issue lies in the fact that Izuku has started teething recently. When he says recently, he means that morning, which means that he has to be gone for a few days when Izuku's teething stage has just begun. Which means he will have to get a nanny or four for a few days until he comes back. He is sure he can bend the rules a little bit, as long as the four nannies can do their schoolwork while they are away from school. Nezu needs to remind himself to buy some futons so they don't sleep on the floor again. Izuku babbled from his floor crib with a cold teething toy in his mouth. Nezu smiled down at him. Hello, little mouse, Papa's going to have to go away soon, but don't worry, your nannies will take good care of you, since I'm in charge of whether they get expelled or not. Izuku laughed. Yes, now time to make a list for them to follow to heart this time, and a grocery list to make sure they don't raid my special snacks. I can't believe Nezu is letting us off of school for a few days just to take care of Izuku, Hisashi yelled at his friends, pumped at the chance. Small bag of clothes and schoolwork adorning arms as well as his classmates. Seriously, don't you remember the last time, when we lost Izuku? Aizawa asked deadpanned as he walked with his friends to Nezu's room. Lighten up, we found him at the end anyway, didn't we? What's the worst that could happen now? Nimuri said as she bumped her arm against Aizawa. Anything worse can happen now, Aizawa said to Nimuri. The three nannies walked to the room with conflicting thoughts in their head. Tensei couldn't make it since he had to take care of Tenya, but he promised to help them with homework and any baby tips, as long as they sent him cute Izuku picture with Nezu's permission. The trio's parents agreed to the 3-day weekend babysitting sleepover since they knew it would teach them responsibility for taking care of a baby, and especially since they were still going to do their homework. Nezu came through the door when they were a few feet from it, his face less tired but more sad. He held Izuku close. "See you soon, my little mouse. I'll be back before you know it." Izuku babbled in his little mouse onesie. Nezu handed Izuku to Aizawa carefully. "Everything you need should be in there. I have $20 a day for your food budget. Anything else will be out of your pocket. There's the updated list on the fridge. I went ahead to purchase some food just in case." Nezu waved goodbye to his students. "Just so three know, he is on his teething stage, so have fun," he ended with a more sadistic smile. Aizawa thought as Nezu walked off, "Son of butternut squash, not again." Everything was going smoothly, was what a crazy person would say. After Nezu had left, Aizawa and Hisashi read the list of things to do out loud as Nimuri kept Izuku in her arms in the living room. They skimmed what was the normal routine before heading to the bottom. P.S. Izuku is very picky when he's teething. I found out this morning when all he wanted to be either his teething toy. I tried multiple methods before landing on his cold toy. He specifically only likes certain things to chew on, this being one of the three. He will drool and get grumpy. Be prepared, students. "Okay, so as long as we have the teething toy, we will be fine, right?" Hisashi said before looking down at Izuku chewing on his fist. "Where the hell is the teething toy?" Aizawa flipped the page over. "PSS, when I was writing this list, I noticed Izuku no longer had his toy. I haven't a clue where it is, but you three will be showing at the door any minute, so no time for a backup plan. Thank goodness. I have all the other methods present in the kitchen. Knock yourselves out." Aizawa grumbled and ran his hands over his face. Nimuri went to ask what was wrong when the 3 days of hell started when Izuku opened his mouth in a weak wail. "First method, chilled spoon." "Hisashi, what the hell?" Aizawa asked, yelling at the blonde fiend with the cold spoon in his hands like a stabbing tool. "I put the spoon in the freezer, was I not supposed to?" Hisashi asked, yelling back at his friends, trying to hear each other over the wails of the infant that was being held by Nimuri. Nimuri whispered, yelled at him, "You were supposed to put it in the fridge, and you weren't supposed to put it in wet." "Why not?" Hisashi asked. Aizawa raised an eyebrow before holding up a cold stainless steel spoon covered in ice that gets jagged in some spots. "Gee, I don't know." First method, chilled spoon, failed. Second method, fingers. "Ow, ow, ow, ow," Hisashi said while his newly cleaned fingers were getting chewed on. "Hey Hisashi, can you feel his little teeth?" Nimuri asked with her finger crossed that this might work. "Oh, I feel it and I don't like it," Hisashi replied back. Izuku started to get irritated with his finger, so Izuku grabbed his finger and took it out of his mouth. Letting one big frown across his face, he whimpered softly. Second method, finger failed. Third method, teething gel. It was after dinner and the three already finished up their homework for that day. They even did tomorrow's ahead of time, the best as they could since they had some quiet time at last. "I can't believe Aizawa found the answer," Nimuri grumbled as she looked at the peacefully slumbering Izuku laying on top of a napping Aizawa on his futon. Hisashi placed a blanket over the two before climbing into his own futon. Turns out, the teething gel really helped Izuku calm down, especially since Aizawa rubbed his gums afterward. Nimuri glanced at her phone. The digital clock read 9:30. It took 4 hours for Izuku to stop fully crying, and this was just the first day. Hopefully the gel works out tomorrow. Third method, teething gel, success. Fourth method, freezing a washcloth. Apparently, the teething gel only works when Izuku was tired, because as soon as Aizawa went to place it on his gums in the morning, Izuku threw the squeeze container on the ground. Not wanting to fight, the others turned to new solutions. Nimuri froze one of the washcloths in the fridge and one in the freezer. Both of them were dry. It seemed to work until lunch when Izuku threw the washcloth at Nimuri's face when he was done chewing on it. They tried the backup from the freezer, but it was too hard for Izuku. Fourth method, freeze a washcloth, failed. Fifth method, peel ginger root. This time, they called in the favor of Tensei, who sneaked his phone into class. Tensei texted them that Tenya seemed to like peeled ginger roots to help with his teething problems. So they tried that. Nezu had a few peeled ginger roots in his cabinet. Hisashi guessed that it must be because he tried one of these methods before, and he prayed to whatever god was close enough that this was the one he liked. Nope, Izuku threw that root away as soon as Hisashi placed it in his mouth. Hisashi's hope was crushed as he watched as the ginger root fell to the floor. Fifth method, ginger root failed. Sixth method, bath and face massage. It was late and close to Izuku's bedtime. Izuku was still trying to teeth by chewing on his onesie while the three of them kept a close eye on him while they ate pizza again for dinner. Aizawa was the first to finish and brought Izuku to the bathroom to get him cleaned up for bed. Aizawa helped by getting Izuku in a good mood by making bubbles while he bathed him. When he was dressed for bedtime, he gently massaged his little cheeks like his mother used to do for him when he was young. Izuku was smiling at him while slowly going to sleep. Aizawa placed a small amount of the teething gel on his gums before laying him down in his crib. Before long, Izuku was out cold. Aizawa, 2. Hisashi, 0. Nimuri, 0. Sixth method, bath and face massage success. Seventh method, vanilla extract. Bath time, however, was just a short fix, and when Aizawa tried again to rub on his little baby cheeks, Izuku got grumpy. He sighed and wiped the drool from Izuku's mouth using a tissue. Nimuri tried a trick that her mother did to her when she was little. She found some vanilla extract and put it on a cotton swab. "Say ah, Izuku," Nimuri said cheerfully. Izuku looked at the short white wand strangely, opening his mouth slowly. She coated his gums with the extract before pulling back. Izuku seemed to taste the overwhelming vanilla but otherwise stayed calm. Yay, she finally got a point. But after lunch, he got grumpy again. The vanilla didn't work again since Izuku wouldn't allow the cotton swab near his mouth again without causing a fuss. Seventh method, vanilla extract failed. Eighth method, cucumber slices. Hisashi thought of a brilliant plan when he was making a sandwich. He pulled out a piece of cucumber for Izuku to chew. Izuku was quite happy with the cool green slice for a while. Before he started to wail again, Nimuri and Hisashi sighed, resting their head in their hands while Aizawa picked up Izuku. Aizawa bounced the child lightly, trying to soothe him. 8 method, cucumber slices failed. Aizawa was bouncing Izuku in his arms as he walked back and forth in his room. He rubbed Izuku's back and hushed him softly. Izuku's cries weren't as loud as before, but he still worried. He wiped the drool away from Izuku's mouth again, but then he noticed something on Izuku's dresser. Something that looked like a teething toy, son of a butternutter. 9th method, teething toy successful. Nezu walked in to see Aizawa on the couch holding a fed, dressed, diaper changed, and happy baby bouncing on his leg. Izuku had his spare teething toy in his mouth. Nezu wondered how long it took them to find out, but seeing their tired faces he could only imagine it was just recently. Nimuri and Hisashi said goodbye before they left very tired. Aizawa stayed a little far behind to give Nezu the update on the methods they tried out, and how Izuku has been over the past few days. Izuku clung to his father while chewing on his giraffe teething toy. He wore a mint green and white striped onesie with a bunny tail on his butt. Aizawa smiled at seeing Izuku so at ease before taking his leave as well. It might have been a hard few days, but Izuku was worth it. Nezu turned to his son when all the teens were gone for the night. He smiled softly at his son's already drooping eyes. He carried him gently to his room and laid him down in his rocking cradle. He slowly rocked him as he hummed a song that they saw in one of those Disney movies Izuku loves so much. Izuku fell asleep slowly with the embrace of his father's warm presence and easy voice. First words. Nezu was experiencing parental excitement. Izuku has been babbling more often lately when he is playing around him. He expects soon that Izuku will say his first words. He watched him play on 10 floors of his office on a fluffy rug. Izuku was dressed in his new favorite onesie that was dinosaur-themed. It had a beige-purple coloring with dark cloth spikes going down his hood onto his back. He was playing with a yarn-stitched octopus that was about the same height as him. They both had matching smiles as Izuku rolled on the floor, holding onto 3 of the tentacles. Nezu realized Izuku was getting older, and that thought excited and terrified him. Terrified him for many reasons, but excited him for a reason he believes will come soon. By his deductions, Izuku will say his first words soon. He was beyond happy. His face was held in a big smile when he walked into the building that morning. But he supposed it was an unusual sight since his faculty looked like they were about to call Recovery Girl. Screw them, I'm happy, Nezu thought as he watched his little mouse crawl around with a brightly colored octopus held in his hands. He knows that it will come soon since a few days ago he had started to mumble and babble different sounds to him. He was going to wake him up that morning only to be greeted with a "bah" from a wide-awake Izuku in his crib. Safe to say, he startled to laugh in joy, even though his neighbors were fearing for their lives at the sound. He checked the time on his clock. Oh, it was time for announcements for the hero classes to begin heading to the training site that was recently fixed. He gathered the mic for the school intercom and pressed the button. I still can't believe it was that difficult for you guys to figure out what Izuku liked when he began teething, Tensei asked after Hisashi explained what fully went on about a month ago again. I mean, how? I don't know, dude, but we now know that Izuku is picky and Nezu likes to watch us suffer, Nimuri said with her face against her desk while doing their classwork. Aizawa elbowed Hisashi to gather the rest of the group's attention to the intercom coming online. Good afternoon, hero students of Class 1A and 1B. You may know to use Training Area Beta again since reconstruction is over. Now Class 1C, General Education. The sound of shuffling paper and Nezu's amused giggle came over the speaker before the sound of Izuku's babbling spread through the school. Ba, pa, ni. Each school then remembered about the baby that Nezu introduced them to not too long ago. Everyone awed at the cuteness of the sweet child's voice, even Yukimura, who was still quite traumatized over the punishment he received. The group of four smiled at the sounds of Izuku before Nezu continued on with the news for each of the departments. And that is all for today, Nezu finished. Have a good afternoon. When he was about to turn it off, the whole school heard a quite cute-sounding babble of "bae." The four slowly looked back at each other from the speaker that they were all staring at. Let me guess, you all want to go see Izuku during lunch break? Aizawa whispered to his friends. The three nodded in unison. Aizawa didn't want to admit he was excited, but he was. They all knew he was just as excited as they were. He had a feeling that Izuku would say his first words today. Izuku's has been babbling a lot since he turned off the intercom while he was playing with his toys. Nezu had a smile on his face while doing his small amount of paperwork. Unfortunately, Nezu has to go host a quick meeting with the faculty during lunch break. Unfortunately, apparently a child during the meeting was distracting and unprofessional. The last time they had a meeting, Izuku took all the attention away from the issues that they were facing. Izuku's giggles while he crawled around the office had every single staff member putty in his hands. Nezu had to make a tough decision and exclude Izuku from the next meeting since it dealt with serious issues that he rather not let Izuku hear. Especially since the support teacher seemed to curse quite a lot and he would not have Izuku's first words be a curse. Fortunately, he checked the cameras to see the group of four making their way to his office. Ooh, perfect timing. Izuku's sudden laugh seemed to be an agreement to whatever decision Nezu made. The four came into the office with hesitancy, but they already knew that Nezu knew that they were coming, so they didn't knock this time. Tensei was the first to walk in, only to awe at the sight of Izuku on his back with the octopus hugged tight to his chest. Izuku looked up at the door and smiled. He started to babble and reach out his hands at the four while Nezu smiled at their entry. Hello, students, what a very pleasant surprise, Nezu said while he hopped off his office chair to go greet them at the door. The four were surprised when he walked to greet them, but Aizawa already had a suspicion that they would be staying a little longer. He narrowed his eyes as Nezu approached Tensei. Nice to see you. Since you are here, you wouldn't mind watching Izuku during the lunch break while I go host a meeting, right? Great, see you, Nezu rambled quickly before briskly walking out the door. Aizawa sighed as he reached his hand to rub at his temples. Great, yep, I knew this was going to happen. Izuku seemed to giggle at Aizawa's annoyance with the whole situation. Great, now Izuku's laughing at my pain. Tensei seemed to be excited about the opportunity to care for Izuku since he missed out last time. Hey Izuku, how have you been, little guy? Tensei asked, approaching slowly with a smile on his face. He went down on his knees to look at Izuku smiling brightly behind his colorful octopus toy. I see you got a new toy, it looks so colorful. The three shrugged at the other's brotherly behavior and joined him on the floor. They had about 30 minutes before Nezu came back to have fun with the little Izuku. They pulled out all the stops. Hisashi hummed little songs while Nimuri made one of his doll dance to it. Tensei made two toys race against each other with Aizawa as the begrudging judge of who won. It was the giraffe toy by a second. The stuffed zebra couldn't keep up. By the time it was time for them to start heading back, which was the bell signaling that Nezu is done with the meeting, their moods were happier. Even Aizawa, who smiled softly as Izuku crawled over to Nezu's desk to look at the items on top of it. "All right, time to head back to the class, little man. Nezu will be back soon to see you," Nimuri retorted as she smiled softly at Izuku peering at Nezu's desk. "Papa," Izuku replied with a bright smile, looking back at the four from the picture frame he was staring at. "Yes, your papa will be here. What did?" Hisashi exclaimed loudly, which made Aizawa automatically slam a hand against his mouth. "Did he just?" Tensei started to ask while looking at Izuku's adorable face. "Say his first words without Nezu present." "Yes, he did, and he will maim us from jealousy." Aizawa finished his statement with widened eyes focused on the smiling child. "Oh no, what are we going to do?" Nimuri asked hesitantly from the doorway as she peeked out to see if Nezu was coming back. "Nothing, nothing, we do nothing," Aizawa replied. "What?" Hisashi asked with a shocked expression. "His first words were Papa, so when he sees Nezu again he will say Papa again. Nezu won't know unless he has a camera somewhere in here, but hey, he will be too happy to notice," Aizawa explained to his friends, who eased at his talking. "Okay, he is coming down the hall now. Let's say goodbye and let Nezu hear his child say his first words for the first time," Nimuri said. They all nodded before saying a quick goodbye to Izuku, which was rewarded with a small wave. They exited the room at the same time Nezu walked in. They said hello and goodbye to their principal before heading to their class. Nezu waved goodbye to the backs of his students before turning around and closing the door behind him. He walked to his desk while looking at Izuku's smiling face while playing with his zebra toy. "Ah, I remember when I got him that toy," Nezu thought, not paying attention to what was in front of him. His toe hit against the desk leg hard while he was too busy paying attention to Izuku. "Hey." "Ow shit," Nezu yelled out before clutching his foot paw. "Shit," Izuku repeated after his father. "Hey. I'm a terrible father," Nezu thought to himself before robotically sitting down at his desk chair. He rested his head on the desk's surface while he listened to Izuku's laughing. Izuku's sound of laughter and clapping did nothing to drown out the feeling of shame that the principal was currently going through. "So how do you think Nezu reacted when Izuku called him Papa?" Tensei asked with excitement in his voice as they went to check on the principal and Izuku at the end of the school day. "Oh, I'm sure he was happier than he has ever been," Hisashi replied with a smile on his face before opening the office door. "Hey, Principal Nezu, just checking in." The office was quiet except for Izuku's babbling sounds. They looked to their principal to see him being emo at his desk. Principal Nezu, what is wrong?" Nimuri asked, carefully treading closer to the depressed father. "I'm a terrible father. I made Izuku's first word to be a curse word, a moment that I wish I can take back," Nezu said as he though, "My toe is still hurting." "What? His first word was a curse word, but his first word was," Hisashi started before Aizawa quieted him with the hand to his mouth again. "What?" Nezu suddenly got out of his funk quick to stare down Hisashi. "Hey." A moment of silence followed, with even Izuku noticing the tension in the room. He looked back at his father sitting by his desk. He smiled at him before crawling his way to him to see his favorite thing on that desk that he saw before. "Well, Principal Nezu, Izuku's actual first words were," Aizawa explained to Nezu's oddly calm, smiling face. "Papa," Izuku called, smiling when he got his father's attention. Clapping, he repeated, "Papa, Papa." Nezu smiled softly at the sight of his little child, saying his first words. "Oh, my precious little mouse," Nezu whispered before taking Izuku up into his arms. "Yeah, we didn't tell you because we figured that Izuku would say it as soon as you come back, but it appears it didn't happen like the way we thought it would, so we all apologize," Tensei responded before the four bowed in unison as an apology. "Oh, thank goodness, that means I have a video of it," Nezu replied happily before tickling Izuku on his tummy. "What do you mean, you have cameras in your office?" Hisashi asked with a sweat bead rolling down his forehead. "Oh please, I have cameras all over the school in each room made with different angles and full audio," Nezu retorted with all his attention on his little dinosaur onesie-dressed son, except for more private areas such as the restrooms. "Man, that is unnerving," the four thought as they watched the happy father smiling with his child. but they all smiled as they watched the two act as father and son. Izuku smiled into his father's shoulders before looking at his favorite thing on the desk his father did his work on, a picture frame of the family picture that Nezu took. Nezu was holding a smiling Izuku dressed in a custom-made Nezu onesie complete with a matching suit to detail to imitate his father. He giggled at seeing his father and him dressed the same with matching smiles aimed toward the camera. A happy family of two, well 6 if you counted the honorary aunts and uncles, Nezu thought. First steps. Nezu realized that Izuku doesn't really have any friends his own age. The only friends he has are his stuffed animals and his family. So Nezu, the great father that he is, decides that it is time for Izuku to make a friend his own age, and who better for the job than Tensei's younger brother. And that is what led to the moment of Tensei leaving his office very happily after agreeing to a play date. Apparently, Tenya didn't have many friends his own age either, so this union might make the two friends. Nezu looked over to Izuku, who was wearing a short-sleeved black shirt with red shorts. The black shirt had a design of one of the top 10 heroes at that moment, and on his feet were bright white shoes that lit up every time he took a step. The shoes were Izuku's favorite thing at the moment since he couldn't stop staring down at them, stomping his feet to cause them to light up again. Nezu hopes the playdate this weekend goes smoothly. Oh, I am all on this. Izuku's first play date, count me the hell in, Nimuri stated proudly, downing her drink in one go. All right, Tensei chuckled. Hey, do you guys want to come too? We can't, Hisashi announced to the table before slamming his head down on the table. Aizawa explained, we have to work on a project on hero history. We are supposed to do research on heroes from about 100 years ago or so that made an impact on society in some way, but we have to get all our sources this weekend. And it is ridiculously hard to actually find someone that someone in the class isn't doing, Hisashi groaned out with his face still smushed against the table. Relax, Hisashi, Aizawa said. He turns his attention to the other two. I want as many pictures and videos as you can get. Roger that, Nimuri saluted while Hisashi was slowly starting to rise his head from the table because of Aizawa's grip on his hair. Sunday seemed like it showed up so fast. Aizawa and Yamada were away at a public library scouring the computers and books to find any hero they could find, while Nimuri was led into Nezu's apartment with Tensei and his brother right behind her. Nezu guides the two inside where they saw Izuku laying on the floor in the living room with a coloring book set in front of him. Izuku looked up to see his aunt and uncle visiting. What are you doing, bud? Color, Izuku replied loudly, showing the bright colors that the marker had left all over his hands. Nimuri giggled at the small mess he had on his hands, Tensei's little brother peeking out from behind his older brother's leg. Izuku's attention drifted to Tenya, who was still hiding behind his brother's leg. Izuku reached out his hand and waved at the other small boy. Tenya's eyes brightened up and he waved right back at the other boy. Tenya, this is Izuku. Izuku, this is my little brother Tenya. Hi, Izuku greeted. Hello, Tenya replied back while his brother guided him to Izuku. Tenya reaches out his hand towards the other boy before Izuku pulled him into a welcoming hug. Tenya froze up momentarily before he relaxed into the hug. Meanwhile, Nimuri was taking a video of the whole thing since it was the most adorable meeting. Aizawa and Yamada are going to be so jealous. I know, right? Tensei whispered back to her. Izuku is wearing a white shirt with a red bow tie decal on his neckline. He was wearing his favorite light-up shoes, which he was now showing to Tenya excitedly. Tensei backs off, allowing the two to sit together as Izuku introduces Tenya to his coloring book as well as his markers. Tenya picks up a blue marker and starts to draw on one page as Izuku scribbles on the other. Nimuri sits on the couch to watch the television as the two kids colored. Tensei sits on the other side of the couch, watching them draw calmly while Nezu was working on school-related stuff for tomorrow behind them. It wasn't long before Tensei started to watch the television with Nimuri while Izuku continued coloring with Tenya. Izuku then felt a sudden urge to show Tenya his favorite octopus toy with all of the knitted arms. He looked around to see where he left it to find it laying over the chair next to the couch. Be back, Izuku whispered with a promise to Tenya, who looked confused. Izuku started to crawl towards his toy before realizing that his toy was laying on top of the chair. He furrowed his brow, trying to reach for one of the knitted arms hanging down. Nimuri glanced over to the play area to find Izuku wasn't there and was near her instead. Tensei, look. Tensei looked to where Nimuri pointed to see Izuku trying to stand up. Nimiri quickly took out her phone start recording a video while Nezu came around the couch to get a closer look. The three didn't dare to stop Izuku as he started to stand up on his little legs. "Come on, Squirt," Tensei encouraged while Tenya was watching his friend. Izuku used the chair as something to lean on while he grabbed his toy from the top of the chair. He stumbled a bit when he took his hand from the chair. Nezu walked around the couch to the other side to encourage Izuku. "Come here, little mouse," Nezu called, grabbing at the air towards his young child. "Papa," Izuku mumbled as one of his arms gripped his toy. He slowly made his way to Nezu with an unsteady pace before finally collapsing into a hug. Tenya didn't know what to do with his hands, so he just clapped. "I got all of it on camera," Nimiri cheered while Tensei looked emotional. "So did I," Nezu stated proudly. "But please send me that video since your point of view is closer than the security cameras in my house." "Cameras?" "Oh yes, I got them installed shortly after everyone stayed overnight to babysit," Nezu added, which made the two friends look to each other with a thought running through their heads. How much does he see? How much does he already know? Tensei summed up, "In short, the playdate yesterday was adorable, and it was even cuter when Izuku called Tenya Ten-chan and then Tenya called him Izu-chan." Hisashi groaned in his hands. "I can't believe we missed Izuku's first steps. We couldn't be there." "If we wanted to fail our project, then yes, we could have," Aizawa fired back at him. "Thank you for sending the video of him walking to us." "No problem," Nimiri smiled, leaning back in her chair. Tensei continued to eat his fruit salad while Hisashi was still talking about how he wants there in person to witness the event. "It was so cute," Hisashi cried out, switching to baby voice. His little bitty baby arms was just wrapped around his little toy, and those little bitty legs were. Hisashi pauses before screaming out, "Why?" Aizawa canceled his quirk just in time so that they all didn't bleed from the ears. "Happy birthday, Izuku." Nezu was feeling sentimental. Who could blame him? It had been a whole year since he adopted Izuku into his life and accepted his role as a parent to a human baby. Well, more like 10 months technically, since he found him when he was only 2 months old. Nezu started having all sorts of feelings. He even began a video album made of surveillance tapes. With every day, he can't imagine what his life would have been like without his little Izuku. His life has gotten more tiring, yet all the happier. He used to live a life of being a captive experiment from humans to break out and form a life for himself. But afterward, his life just felt empty and boring. The only upside was him being able to be the principal for UA, and even then, he was still criticized for slipping up. But when Izuku came into his life, he started to see the bright side of things. The overall gray world made of black and white grew into color each and every day when he saw his baby smile. The hatred he felt all his life lessened when he heard Izuku laugh. That's why he didn't really want to see him grow old, but he knew it was a part of life. Hell, even Izuku's honorary aunt and uncles were going to graduate eventually. But instead of trying to hold back Izuku from growing up like the humans used to do to him, he wanted to see him grow. He wanted to see Izuku become his own person, no matter if he wants to be a hero or not. But right now, he has a birthday party to plan for Friday. The guests needed the time to buy Izuku's gifts. It will be interesting to see what they will gift him. "Now, Izuku, we have to wait for the perfect temperature of the tea," Nezu explained to the curious almost 1-year-old holding his teacup of imaginary tea. Nezu wasn't about to have Izuku spill any tea in his clothes. "Tea," Izuku drawled as he held onto his cup with both hands, staring intensely into the bottom of the cup. "Yes, and then we sip." Nezu finished off with an exaggerated sip to his tea. Izuku followed suit with a replicated loud slurp to his empty cup. He giggled and Nezu smiled softly at the cheerful child. "I wouldn't trade my life as a father for anything." "What the heck do we get, Izuku?" Hisashi said as he walked through the mall with his group. Tensei had Tenya riding in his shoulder while Nimiri and Aizawa were constantly in watch with the shop windows. They were looking for something that Nezu hadn't bought him at all, which was so hard since Nezu spoiled him a lot with all sorts of toys. The best choice would be something a little more sentimental than just a cool plushie that we can buy anywhere. We have to deep dive into something that Izuku would like with a personal touch from us. Aizawa explained, looking around for anything that would be good for Izuku. Nimuri's eyes brightened when her eyes locked in a certain shop. I got it, I can make my own stuffed animal. She took off and the other followed her inside the Build-A-Bear. Nimuri picked a white fluffy bear and a white mouse plush. She asked a worker to try to combine the two skins into one plush. They agreed to meet her back at the end of the shopping trip since the custom order will take a while. Hisashi headed down the hall and spotted something in the window of an antique thrift shop. He ran straight inside, leaving his other two friends to follow him inside. There he was already asking the worker behind the register for the music box in the window. The worker agreed and got it down from the display. I used to love a little music box when I was little, so I want Izuku to have the same comfort I had when I was young, Hisashi explained while the worker retrieved the music box from its spot. Hisashi paid while the others looked around the shop to see small items. Vintage dolls that they didn't want to, but since they didn't want Izuku to be haunted, they didn't get it. There were bronze brooches, old decorations, and other items that didn't seem like an option for Izuku. I think the music box was the only thing that Izuku would like from his store. After that was done, Hisashi was carrying the music box in his doubled-up paper bag. Tensei led the way since he reimbursed a certain shop that the mall had. He sped up when he saw it further down. The other two hurried to follow after his friend who had his brother on his shoulders, laughing the whole way there. Tensei walked fast inside a bicycle shop and headed towards the kids section. There he spotted a bright cherry red tricycle with a woven basket and tiny bell attached to the front. I learned to ride when I was very young and I loved the freedom of riding around. I hope Izuku will like it, Tensei responded when Aizawa asked. Hisashi and Aizawa were both still breathless as Tensei talked about purchasing the trike. They met him outside with him walked the tricycle beside him and talking to Tenya about what he wanted to get his friend. Tenya thought for a moment before saying, colors. Colors? Oh, you mean like coloring books and stuff? Tensei asked, receiving a nod from his brother. Okay. The three headed to the general store to buy a coloring book with crayons. They were just planning on getting a normal Pro Heroes coloring book before Tenya headed towards a large art kit containing a lot of art stuff. The kit contained crayons, markers, colored pencils, watercolors, and brushes. Colors, Tenya exclaimed while trying to pick up the large blue kit. The three stared and shrugged before heading to the cash register to check out. They also got a Pro Heroes coloring book that they hadn't seen Nezu get Izuku yet. They walked out and met Nimuri with their custom doll in a large brown paper bag. Aizawa was the only one who needed to get a gift to Izuku. He spotted the perfect gift in the window of a few stores down. Oh, Izuku would love that, at least I hope. It was the day of Izuku's birthday party. Nezu hosted it at his apartment since he didn't want it to be at UA where everyone could come. No, he wanted this to be a private party with only the closest family that Izuku had. Nezu, Aizawa, Hisashi, Nimuri, Tensei, and his first friend Tenya. Izuku was dressed for the occasion with a birthday-themed onesie. He had a party hat on the top of his head surrounded by curly green hair. He had a bright, cheerful smile on seeing his favorite people. Everybody was there and the party could commence. The party started with an animated movie before cutting the cake Nezu had made ahead of time. He was delighted that it turned out so well. A small 2-layer cake covered in delicious white buttercream. The top had the message, "Happy Birthday Izuku," written in thin green icing. All kinds of sprinkles were all around the cake. One layer was vanilla and the other was chocolate. Aizawa, Hisashi, and Nezu chose the vanilla cake on top while Nimuri, Tensei, Tenya, and Izuku ate from the bigger chocolate layer on the bottom. The cake was delicious. After the cake, everyone sat down and talked to each other while their stomachs settled. After that, the present time. Izuku was already excited because his friends were here, but now he gets gifts. Woo, best day. Yay, Izuku said happily as Nezu rounded up the gifts for Izuku. Who wants to go first? Nezu asked before Nimuri raised her hand. I'll go, Nimuri answered while picking up her white wrapped gift with a red bow. I think Izuku will love this one. Oh really? Nezu asked curiously to the plush bear-sized bag. Yep, Nimuri said, placing the bag in front of Izuku. Izuku ripped open the paper to see an almost exact replica of his father in plush form. Papa, Izuku cried out before hugging the plush to his chest. The white bear-mouse hybrid had on a white dress shirt, black pants, a pair of black shoes, a black vest, and a glossy red bow tie. Nezu chuckled at the small toy that looked like him, sort of. Thank you, Izuku exclaimed from the confines of the soft plush's fur. I'll go next, Hisashi said as he placed a soft brown bag in front of Izuku. Izuku placed the plush to his side before ripping open the paper. Pretty, Izuku replied at seeing the cute outside of the music box. It had a light mint green outside with a carnation pink rim. Hisashi went ahead and turned the little crank. The soft song began to play as the music box opened to see a ballerina dancing in the center. Izuku giggled at the dancer while swaying to the music. I think he likes it, Hisashi mumbled to his friends. Thank you, Izuku mumbled as he focused on the ballerina doing her dance while the lid slowly shut. Tensei went up next with the tricycle. Izuku clapped at the sight while Nezu was thoroughly surprised. This is a lovely tricycle, Nezu responded to Tensei. Izuku looked at the whole gift with wide eyes and an open mouth. I hope Izuku will like it, Tensei answered. He does, thank you Tensei, he will love it when he is old enough to ride it. Nezu thanked, which made Tensei realize that Izuku probably won't use the bike until a few years later. Tenya went next with his gift. Izuku loved it because of the many colors that were inside. Nezu smiled as Izuku started to make a mess with the markers already. He carefully took the markers away for Aizawa to give Izuku a gift. Problem child, I think you would like this since it is comfortable and makes us spot you easily, Aizawa said before handing Izuku's gift to him, which he proudly ripped off. Izuku was now holding a pink sleeping bag with a soft pink lining on the inside. Izuku smiled before chanting, yay, yay, yay. He started to climb inside with his plush bear with the help of Aizawa. Thank you, Izuku mumbled from beneath all the comfy material. Nezu laughed at seeing his little boy having fun with his family surrounding him. Nezu's time to give Izuku a gift. He laughed maniacally before lifting a huge bag from behind the couch. He gently dumped the movies onto the ground to show everyone what exactly he bought. Movies. A whole collection of movies ranging to animation to teen comedies. Studio Ghibli, Pixar, DreamWorks, and Disney movies took up the majority, but Aizawa saw Mean Girls and Legally Blonde in the pile. What is up with these? Aizawa asked at the two movies that stuck out from the cartoon movies. He needs to be cultured, Nezu responded, which got him laughs from the other three teens in the room. Tenya looked confused while Aizawa looked on with a smile. Izuku looked out from his sleeping bag to see his family having fun with each other. Nezu looked at him to receive a smile from his little mouse. I think he knows how much his family loves him. I know that Izuku's family might grow in the future, Nezu thought. Where is he? It was family day today. Everyone's family was able to come to UA to spend some time with their child at the school campus. And it was even more exciting for the third years that were graduating soon. It was only a short time before the third years would start their own careers, including the 4 honorary aunt and uncles of the principal's son. Hisashi's parents were chatting with Nimuri's parents while Tensei's family were off to the side with Tenya. Unfortunately, Aizawa's parents couldn't really make it because of their work, but his mother informed him to take lots of pictures for her. Hisashi was busy with Tensei as they were checking up on Tenya, who was excited to show Izuku his new puzzle book. Nimuri was pulled into a conversation with her parents to talk more about her social life to make sure no one was bringing her down. They approved of her friends, but her father was protective over her and didn't want anyone to hurt his little girl. Aizawa was hanging out in the principal's office, watching as Izuku crawled around fast on the floor. He watched as Izuku stood up after picking up one of his toys before running to him to show it off. Ah, it has been a while since I've seen Mr. Sloth, Aizawa commented, ruffling Izuku's hair. Izuku laughed, showing off the little teeth inside his mouth. He smiled as he thought back to the video Nimuri had sent them with Izuku's first steps. Hisashi is still bitter that he wasn't there to see it, but it was a happy memory nonetheless that they were all going to remember fondly, especially since Nezu had it all recorded from the security cameras in his office as well as Nimuri's video. He thinks she even took some pictures. Since then, Izuku has been walking a little better each day. He wonders if Izuku will just disappear from sight if he takes his eyes off of him. It felt like just yesterday he was saying his first words and now he is walking around. Ah, Aizawa was getting all sentimental. He looked down at the sloth toy as the office seems to grow quiet around him. The office door opened slightly to reveal his three friends without their parents. Nimuri greeted, "Our parents all met each other and are chatting up a storm right now outside the cafeteria. How's it hanging with little Izuku?" "Everything is good for once. He has been playing with his toys since I got here," Aizawa explained, looking at his friends. "Well, where is he?" Tensei asked, receiving a confused look from Aizawa. "What do you mean? He's right there," Aizawa said as he pointed to where he last saw Izuku, but his finger showed nothing but empty space and a forgotten toy lying on the ground. "Where did he go?" Hisashi called out loudly in confusion. The friends hurriedly looked around the office to see no sign of the green-haired boy, not behind the desk, not next to his toys, not next to the wide-open door. "Son of a Honybun," Aizawa yelled in frustration at seeing where Izuku might have gone. "Why did you leave the door open?" "I thought I did," Nimuri replied. "I didn't close it all the way, but I didn't leave it wide open like that." "Oh dear, this is bad," Tensei said after he walked up to the empty doorway. "I don't see him in the hallway. Where did he walk off to?" "Okay, Hisashi, go find where Nezu is and see if Izuku is just trying to find him. Distract him if necessary. I'm going to head down the rooms of this hallway and stay in this area, so if he comes back, I'll be here. Nimuri, you go walk around downstairs and see if you can find him anywhere. Tensei, head down to the parents and see if he shows up anywhere." Aizawa broke it down. The friends nodded in agreement before taking their job positions. Meanwhile, Izuku smiled from his favorite hiding spot in the office. He thinks it will be an exciting game of hide and seek. Izuku hid his giggle as he silently walked off toward where he heard other children. They must be far away, but he will find them and make friends. "Hello," Nezu greeted his student as Hisashi sped walked towards where he was. "Ah, hi, how are you doing? Is running an event like this calming or stressing?" Hisashi asked, hoping to get Nezu on a big tangent of some kind. "Whatever do you mean? I like to have these events to show the extent of what UA has to offer. This event allows the family of students to visit and explore the school that their child is attending with little restrictions. It is basically like a tour through the school with the family able to talk to anyone and just have fun," Nezu explained. "Ah, is this because you wish to pursue into becoming an entertainer as well?" "Ooh, yep, yeah, I wanted to know more about this kind of being a host thing since I want to be a radio DJ. That's the only reason why," Hisashi rambled, trying his best to distract Nezu. "Anyway, is there any advice you can give me?" "Why, of course, I think I have just the advice you need, but it might be a long explanation," Nezu informed him. Hisashi waved it off. "I have plenty of time. My parents are checking out outside with the Kayama family. Please tell me everything." "Haha, you might want to take notes," Nezu added, leading him to a more open area near the cafeteria. Hisashi silently prayed that they find Izuku fast because he doesn't really know how long this Nezu lecture is going to last. Well, at least he will get some helpful information about what to do in his future. "Nick-chan," Tenya called out as he saw his brother make his way towards them. "Hi, Tenya," Tensei greeted his brother with a friendly smile. "Hey, have any of you seen a green-haired kid around Tenya's age near here?" His mom furrowed her brows. "Is someone missing?" No, I might just think he is playing hide and seek or something with us," Tensei answered back. "A game of hiding and seek that we have no idea we are playing," he thought to himself. Tensei looked down at his brother, squatting down to his level. "Anyway, I'm just out there looking for him. Do you want to help Tenya? Izuku is playing hide and seek." "Find a friend?" Tenya asked, with his bright eyes sparkling at the chance to play with his older brother and his first friend. "Yep, you want to help your big brother out?" Tensei asked, stretching out a hand. Tenya excitedly grabbed his hand and walked with his brother through the outside. He kept his eye open as he slowly walked side by side with his brother. It wasn't long before Tensei picked him up in his arms to avoid dragging his little brother behind him since his pace was a bit faster. Tenya settled in his arms quickly, scoping out the area to find his friend. Tenya spotted a head of green hair behind a bush. Izuku peered over the leaves and brought a finger to his lips. Tenya tilted his head at the action before repeating the action back. Izuku nodded back at him, slowly crawling out of his hiding spot to continue walking back into the school. "Friend." "Yeah, we are looking for Izuku." Friend went in. Izuku went back inside. Tenya nodded back at his brother because he can't keep a secret from him. "Okay, good," Tensei responded back, digging into his pocket to call Nimuri. Nimuri, yeah, it's me. Listen, Izuku should be on the first floor right now, more towards the east area of the school. Tenya saw him go in apparently. Yeah, I'm still outside. Alright, sounds good. Guess I can be out here for a little longer. Hey, do you want to play a game? Tensei asked, smiling at his brother while on the inside he was screaming. Nimuri headed straight towards where Tensei told her that Izuku would be, surveying the surroundings to spot familiar green curls. She was about to look around the area for the third time when he heard the familiar giggle of Izuku coming from nearby. For a split second, she could see a head of curls heading upstairs. Her eyes widened and tried to follow him, only to find out she lost him in the many people in the hallway passing through. Nimuri texted Aizawa that Izuku just got past her and was heading upstairs. She ran her hand down her face. She hopes they find him soon. She was so worried that he might be hurt while he was running around, or that they would be hurt for losing him in this big school. Izuku stumbled his way inside his father's office to go back into his favorite hiding spot behind his papa's desk. Aizawa walked into the office, noticing how the office door was opened slightly more than before, hoping that it wasn't just a coincidence. He was just in the faculty room looking for Izuku for about the 5th time. He had already checked all the rooms on the floor except the office. Aizawa's eyes swept over the room, notching practically nothing out of place since last time he checked. Meanwhile, under Nezu's desk, Izuku was beginning to feel like he wanted to end the game already, but he was having fun with everyone playing hide and seek with him. Aizawa breathed out heavily, sinking down to sit right in front of Nezu's desk where Izuku was hiding. He groaned with face in his hands. Where is he? This never would have happened if it weren't for me. If I would have watched him better as I should have, this wouldn't have happened. But now I don't know where he is if he is hurt. I suck at being an uncle for Izuku, he said sadly, looking at the ground. If I can't find one kid, how am I supposed to save people? He thought to himself before glancing out of the corner of his eye to see Izuku peeking over the corner of Nezu's desk. Izuku, Aizawa sighed in relief. No, Izuku called out from his spot. No, sad sorry. Aizawa got wrapped up in a hug by Izuku, who looked on the verge of tears. Izuku, are you okay? Did you get hurt? I'm okay, sorry, Izuku mumbled into his chest. Aizawa rubbed his curls. Next time you want to play hide and seek, let all of us know first. We were all worried about you. Izuku tightened his grip on Aizawa's school jacket while Nimuri showed up at the office door to the scene before them. She was a bit worried since Aizawa hadn't responded in text yet. Hisashi appeared next with a tired look in his eyes and a notebook filled with helpful advice from Nezu. They all joined in on the hug in the ground of the office and listened to Izuku apologize for making them worried. They were all just happy that Izuku was safe now and a little tired from the wild goose chase. Izuku sniffled softly as they all reassured him that they weren't mad, only worried. Soon the 4 joined the pair of brothers playing catch. Izu-chan. Hi Ten-chan. You guys want to grab something to eat since family day is almost over? Yes, Hisashi and Nimuri said in a tired unison. Aizawa watched Izuku play with Tenya as the 4 friends ate with their parents. Tenya was happily showing Izuku his new book while the two snacked on sliced apples. He made sure to never take his eyes off of him for too long. They were family after all. Nezu sighed as he tucked Izuku goodnight. You okay, Izuku? You have been looking quite down. Was it because of what happened today? Izuku nodded sadly to his dad from under his comfy blanket. Well, now cheer up, they were just worried for you. That means they care an awful lot about you, Nezu explained while fixing up his pillows. Really? Izuku perked up at hearing that maybe they didn't hate him because of the stunt he pulled. He was really worried that he might not play with them again. Yes, really, I consider them a part of your family, no matter if they are related to you or not. They will genuinely care for you and love you as I do, Nezu kindly replied with a soft smile. Okay, love you, Papa, Izuku tiredly retorted as his eyes drooped. Love you too, little mouse. Good night, Nezu said, placing a small kiss on his forehead before heading out of the room. He is growing up so fast, Nezu thought as he looked back at his son's room. Hopefully he doesn't grow up too fast. Izuku makes a new friend, and Endeavor makes his worst enemy. Nezu enjoyed letting Izuku live a normal life. He went to a normal school because Nezu wanted him to live as normal as he could with a pro hero as his secret father. Hopefully, he finds some friends that will be there for him in the long run. When he grew older, Nezu hoped that Izuku will live his life as freely as he can because Nezu wanted him to be uncontrolled. Maybe with a little bit of instruction and advice, but never with an abusive hand pushing him into things. Izuku was 3 years old now, and Nezu was feeling that the time was passing too quickly. It felt like a week ago that Izuku turned 1. Nezu sipped his mint tea with his little mint-flavored cookies as he watched Izuku interact with Tenya during the school day at UA. Tenya was allowed to have a play date with his friend while their big brother was busy with his new hero work. Yes, all his honorary uncles and aunt were now working as pro-heroes. Under the names Midnight, Ingenium, Present Mike, and Eraserhead, they patrol the streets and protect the innocent from danger. Nezu couldn't be more proud at what they have become. Although he does remember that they graduated with a heavy heart by having to say goodbye to their honorary nephew. They miss getting to see him every day, but they do visit when they don't have any patrol clogging up their schedule. Aizawa visited the most during the day since he works as an underground hero during the night. Anyway, enough of talking about the past because Endeavor was visiting with Nezu to talk about when he might be able to enroll his children in UA. Nezu allowed him to bring his youngest child, Shoto, so that Izuku might have another friend to lay with while his father talked to another father. He hoped that Endeavor had fixed his whole problem with All Might and was actually behaving like a good father to his children. But his hope will be quickly diminished very soon. Tenya and Izuku were coloring in their coloring books when a child of split white and red hair walked in shyly. "Behave," a harsh voice said from the deck of the door before shutting it loudly. The young boy flinched before continuing to a place a few feet away from the two. Izuku tilted his head and looked at Tenya. "I think he is shy." "It looks like he is," Tenya replied. "What do we do?" "I'm going to invite him over to play with us," Izuku said to his friend before they both nodded at each other. The new boy looked over when Izuku walked to him. "What do you want?" "I want to be friends," Izuku responded with his hand held out. "I'm Izuku." "Why do you want to be friends?" Shoto asked quietly. Izuku looked at him. "Because you look lonely and I don't want you to be." "We have a wide selection of toys to play with," Tenya yelled out from his spot behind Izuku. Shoto mumbled. "What's your favorite hero?" "Mine is Nezu," Izuku asked the young boy. "I like my brother Ingenium the best," Tenya said from behind Izuku, looking at Shoto. "I like All Might, but my dad doesn't like him very much," Shoto answered with a slight pink tinge to his cheeks. "All Might is a good hero. He works well with his enhanced abilities to rescue people and defeats villains easily," Izuku replied intelligently with his hand under his chin. Tenya nodded at his words while Shoto looked at them curiously. "We can play a game of heroes. I'll be Nezu, Tenya can be Ingenium, and you can be All Might," Izuku offered. "I don't have to be Endeavor?" Shoto asked, raising his brow. "Nope." Shoto was beginning to like this place. Nezu was tired of Endeavor. He hasn't changed his mind about his little petty rivalry at all in these past years. He walked with him back to the room where the children were playing. Nezu opened the door to see his child getting along well with the other two. They all seemed to be playing with some action figures of recent pro-heroes. His heart grew at the sight of his son playing with a little cloth doll that he made himself a few months ago since Nezu didn't make any merchandise. Tenya was playing his brother and Shoto was playing with a tall All Might figurine. "Shouto," Endeavor called out to his son, scaring the 3 children inside the room. Nezu fur bristled at his son's frightened face. "Endeavor, I highly recommend you lower your voice. Now," Nezu offered to the tall alumni. Endeavor scoffed while his son scurried to his side, rather silent. Nezu noticed how Shoto hid his left arm from his sight as he rushed past to gate behind his father. Nezu narrowed his gaze to see that Shoto scratches at his covered arm. Before he could ask if the boy wanted to go to the nurse's office, Endeavor started dragging him away by his left arm. Shoto winced at his string grip while he practically dragged him away from the room. Nezu crosses his arms with a sinister smile on his face, looking at Endeavor exiting. He turned back to Izuku to ask some questions. "Did you notice anything strange, son?" Nezu approached his son. Izuku tapped his finger to his chin, remembering the play date. "He didn't really believe us when we told him we wanted to play with him and be friend. He told us his dad didn't like All Might." "Strange anything else?" Nezu asked. "He reacted scared if we yelled too loud. He, kind of scratched at his left arm every now and then," Tenya added from his place next to Izuku's side. Nezu hummed to himself before nodding to himself. You two continue your fun. Where are you going, Dad? Izuku questioned his father as he opened the door. I'm going to call up an old friend who helped me before. I need his help for a big case I'm about to be headmaster of, and if my hunch is correct, the person in question will face a punishment worse than death. Nezu answered with a creepy smile. Oh, okay, love you, Izuku commented before continuing to pick up and play with his homemade cloth doll. I love you too, little mouse, Nezu commented before closing the door. Detective, nice to see you again, ready to bring down a prob hero with me, haha, want some tea? Nezu greeted Naomasa, overjoyed at the possibility of getting Endeavor right where he wanted him. Oh boy, Naomasa sighed before taking his seat across from Nezu sitting at his desk. Now then, Nezu gathered himself before smiling happily at the man. What is our first step to get rid of this piece of shit? Endeavor is going down. Nezu was tired of clenching his teeth. Tsukachi needed time to gather evidence on his end, so he recommended that Nezu do his own recon on getting information to use against Endeavor. And what better way to do that than scheduling a play date at Endeavor's house while he goes to work? This gives him the perfect chance to see how the house is and what the family behaves like. So while Tsukachi was skidding around his office finding anything under a rock, Nezu was waiting patiently outside for Mrs. Todoroki to answer the door. Finally, she opened the door with a nervous smile. Hello, I have come to let Izuku have a playdate with Shoto. I'm Nezu, principal of UA, he greeted holding out his paw, which Rei shook with practiced ease. Oh yes, hello, I'm Shoto's mother. You can call me Rei, I prefer it, Rei replied. Nezu noticed how she didn't say how she was his wife, she just said that she was a mother. He placed that thought in possible evidence against Endeavor. He walked in and automatically noticed how different it was from his home. It was traditional, yes, and his was more odor, but there was a feeling to it. This house didn't feel like home, it just felt empty, like there was no warmth, only coldness. Another piece of evidence logged away in his memory. Come this way to the living room. Shoto is waiting there, Rei said, leading the way. Nezu followed her, noticing small things along the journey. There was no family portraits or pictures in general of the family members. He narrowed his eyes as he noticed how Shoto sat alone on the couch when they entered. That was strange. Where was Endeavor's other children? Nezu let Izuku go so he could run up to his newest friend to play. Rei smiled softly at Shoto's happy face. Would you mind if I looked around the house? I never get invited to many house parties, Nezu asked with a smile. Rei nodded. Nezu smiled bigger and gently responded, Great. He went off, leaving his son in the care of the gentle mother. Nezu's smile dropped as he ventured around the house. The traditional Japanese houses were always confusing to him. But before long, he found a giant room. A feeling settled in his stomach that didn't feel good. No, not good at all. He opened the screen door and held in utter horror he felt. It was like a flashback to when he was trapped. That was the feeling of no escape that he got from the room. He noticed how there was dried blood stains on the floor. He stepped inside quietly to see the many training equipment up on the walls. He didn't get a good feeling about this. Who are you? A male voice said from behind him. He turned around to see bright red hair and electric blue eyes in the form of a preteen boy. Am I a bear or a mouse? Hello, I'm Nezu, he greeted to the boy. The boy scrunched his eyebrows. Oh, the principal of UA, what are you doing here? My son is having a playdate with your younger brother, Shoto, Nezu replied, approaching the preteen, eager to get out of this room. The boy stepped back in mild fear. You aren't going to train me, right? He asked with a tone to his voice that Nezu recognized as fear. No, I'm not. Does your father train you? Nezu questioned. Electric blue eyes looked over the animal with a quirk in silence. He deducted that this might be his only chance. He narrowed his eyes before stating to Nezu, no, training isn't the right word for what he does to me or my family. Rei was sitting on the couch watching her son play with his new friend. Shoto would turn 4 in 2 months and she dreaded it so soon. She didn't want to be another maker to Endeavor's master plan, but she didn't want her son to be treated the way Endeavor would if he turns out to have the perfect combination he is looking for. She was so scared for her children. She doesn't want this to happen anymore. From the corner of her eyes, she noticed her second youngest, Natsuo. Hello, Natsuo, what are you doing? Just watching, Mama. Does Shoto have a friend? Natsuo asked. Rei smiled. Yes, just a few days ago. Just then, Nezu came around the corner with her eldest, Taoya. He motioned for her to come to him. Rei raised a brow, very curious to see what Nezu could want. She excused herself to Natsuo, leaving him to watch over the two younger kids. Yes, she asked, looking between her son and Nezu. Nezu raised his somber-looking eyes. Tell me everything. I want to help you and your family get away from him. Rei gasped as tears started to fall silently. She could finally have help. She nodded before leading the two away to tell her story. While the other two children watched over the youngest play with his new friend, Natsuo and Fayumi smiled at their brother while wondering what her mother was talking about so fervently with the principal. After an hour, the three exited the room with matching looks of calmness. All right, Izuku, time to head home. We will see your friend and his family again very soon, Nezu said to his young son. Izuku looked up and nodded happily at his dad. Okay, Dad, bye Sho-chan, I'll see you later, Izuku retorted to his friend while walking away, waving at him. Shoto waved back with a relaxed smile at his very excited friend. Nezu nodded to Rei and Taoya before heading outside. He had a lot to tell to Tsukachi. All right, Endeavor, let's play a game, Nezu thought to himself with a sadistic smile growing on his face while he made his way to the police station. When he entered, Izuku took in a gasp at the sight of four familiar faces. Uncle Zawa, Uncle Ten, Uncle Zashi, Aunt Nem. Izuku greeted loudly at the sight of his four favorite aunt and uncles. Eraserhead hid his gentle smile under his scarf while Present Mike yelled openly in excitement. Ingenium smiled under his night mask while Midnight gladly welcomed him with a big greeting. Midnight welcomed, Hey Izuku, how have you been, little guy? You are growing so tall. Izuku ran up to her for Midnight to wrap him up in a hug. Hey, where my hug? Present Mike complained loudly, only to receive a loving hug from Izuku by a Midnight passing him to the loud blonde. Ingenium received his nice big hug from Present Mike passing him the small child. Hello, buddy, haven't seen you in a while. Eraserhead took the child from his other uncle with his gray scarf. Hey, problem child, Eraserhead greeted softly, ruffling up Izuku's curls. I'm heading to Tsukachi's office to talk about a new case involving Endeavor, Nezu replied to his old students. Endeavor, man, I don't really like that guy, he's all full of himself, Present Mike responded. All full of himself, really? Honestly, best way to describe him is very angry at seemingly nothing and everything at the same time, Ingenium retorted. Why are you doing a case on him, Nezu? Midnight asked quietly while Eraserhead distracted Izuku with his dancing scarf. It's not safe to talk about it here, but let it be known that Endeavor will be taken down for what he has been doing. Do you need our help with anything, sir? Ingenium asked politely. Well, Izuku doesn't really know what the whole thing will come to eventually. I would like you four to take care of him while I bring him down. Can you do that? Nezu questioned with a calm smile directed toward the smiling Izuku. Babysit the title guy like we used to do. Sure, no problems, Present Mike answered happily, ready to spoil his nephew. Good, I'll go talk to Tsukachi. I'll leave Izuku in your hands for this short period, Nezu said. The four nodded at the easy order, ignoring the sadistic smile that Nezu was gaining thinking about what he could do to Endeavor. Tsukachi was in his office gathering details from his sources about Endeavor dealing with illegal practice of quirk marriage when Nezu strolled in looking happy to rip some limbs of a certain someone. He is going down tonight, Nezu stated in front of Tsukachi's desk. Nezu gets to take Endeavor down. Tsukachi sat down at his office desk with his head in his hand while the other searched for more evidence of Endeavor's examples of abusive behaviors while dealing with citizens. He had already gathered video evidence of Endeavor putting innocent lives in danger with his strong fire quirk. Nezu had already prepared many evidence of reports of the amount of damage that Endeavor had made while dealing with villain attacks. Tsukachi couldn't tell how much Nezu had gathered in such a short time, but by the sheer height of it, he could tell that Endeavor was in some deep trouble. He felt nervous for anyone else to cross Nezu to this degree. Did you find anything else to drag his name in the mud? Nezu asked as he organized the papers he collected into different folders while his legs slightly swung on his short height chair. A lot, actually, more than I thought I would find in such a short amount of time. It makes me wonder how no one ever looked closely on how much damage he did, Tsukachi said as he scrolled down yet another source reporting on the worst things Endeavor has caused. Haha, it sure seems that way, doesn't it? Nezu stated, unnervingly sadistically smiling as he stacked all the evidence against him that was slowly growing in weight and length. I can't wait for everyone to see how much of a terrible individual he is, how bad he is being his facade of heroism. Based on what you told me, I am eager to see the faces of unsuspecting people who doesn't know what he has done. I'm honestly waiting myself, Nezu replied with a gleeful smile, already plotting what he could possibly do to the poor excuse of a father. I can't wait for them to know what he has been hiding from the public's eyes. 4 uncles and aunt watched over Izuku at his home, while Nezu dealt with most of the digging. Eraserhead gladly handed over what he had gathered in his relatively short time working the underground hero life. His Ashin Tensei told their own experiences talking with him, and how they felt strange in his glaring eyes. Nimiri told of her unpleasant conversation with him regarding ranks, and how he smirked proudly at saying how his offspring will surely beat All Might before he could even retire. Nezu took all of it into consideration, gathering each and every dirty detail that will prolong Endeavor's stay in a cell. After many long hours of gathering, they finally gained enough evidence to use against Endeavor in court. Finally, exactly when he predicted it will end. Now it's time for the second step of his plan that would commence tomorrow as scheduled. Nezu smiled as he guided Rei and her children into the same room of Izuku and Tenya. Without Endeavor knowledge, his family had been sneaked out and was now been held safely in Nezu's protection. Endeavor was already waiting in his office for them to talk about a certain issue, but little does he know, the only problem is him. You are welcome to stay here for as long as you need. I will take care of the big issue that holds your family back from the happy life you all deserve. Tensei will watch over you all with his little brother, Tenya. After this day, you won't be under his control anymore, Nezu explained while Rei smiled at him gratefully. Thank you so much, Rei replied with a single joyful tear rolling down her cheek. She thanked him once again before following her eldest son into the room. Izuku's giggle was the last happy thing Nezu heard before closing the door safely behind him. Nezu adopted a neutral frown that replaced his smile. He breathed out and headed to his office where Endeavor waited. He opened the door, ignoring Endeavor's complaining of him taking so long. He climbed up into his seat to face the fiery man. What seems to be a big problem that I was forced to come meet you to deal with? Endeavor asked, arms folded across his chest. Ah yes, the problem is you, Nezu said before taking a well-needed sip of tea. Endeavor eyes twitched. What? You heard me, flaming industrial waste disposal. Nezu snickered, playing with the tea bag string sticking out of his teacup. How dare you, Endeavor started to say before Nezu brought one of his paws up to silence him. How dare I? Oh no, no, you don't get to say that, dear hero, Nezu stated before taking a long sip of his tea. He paused to look into the small photo frame of his son and him for motivation to continue with his plan. The police are on their way now. I spent a lot of time gathering information against you to use in court to bring your dark dealings out into the light. Now, it is finally the time for you to face your future. I can't believe this, I'm a pro hero, Endeavor complained loudly, flames bruising higher from his shoulders. You want me to be the bad guy? All right, I'm the bad guy, Nezu stated, staring straight into Endeavor's eyes. You are going to jail, you piece of garbage. He clapped his paws together with each pause between words. Before Endeavor could say anything, Tsukachi came into the office with Eraserhead right behind him, scarf at the ready in case Endeavor put up any fight. Nezu watched with a small smile that grew more sadistic as Endeavor was apprehended and dragged out of his office. With his short amount of alone time, he sipped his tea while laughing maniacally. With all the evidence shown at the court, Endeavor was found guilty. It also helped that the young Toya and Rei stepped up and relayed what their lives were like while the other 3 sat in patience, waiting until the end. Reports of his rude and terrible behavior towards people around incidents, receipts of the illegal Quirk marriage, and every last piece of detail they could dig up contributed to the case greatly. His overpriced lawyers tried to dig their way out of the long, unending hole, but they were no match for Nezu's intelligence for gathering the plan. The judge banged his gavel, deciding the final punishment for the guilty former hero. Endeavor's hero license will be taken away, the children will be under the full custody of Miss Rei, and what was that last bit again? Oh yes, Nezu will be allowed to have one last talk with him before he is sent to his jail cell. Hello, Todoroki NG, formerly known as Endeavor. Nezu's mocking voice called out to him, slightly muffled. What is this place? Enji questioned as he looked around the hauntingly abandoned-looking area. He looked down to find his wrists in chains to prevent him from using his quirk to full capacity. The cuffs allowed him to use his quirk to a certain very small amount. He wasn't in his costume anymore, he was stripped of his hero status. He was dressed solely in a black shirt and pants, bare feet against the cold cement of the fake street. Nezu's voice echoed from wherever he was hiding. Oh, you don't remember the old training grounds that you used to try to become a hero? Well, so much for that. Why did you bring me here? What do you have planned? Enji asked as he started to walk around to find the source of the chilling principal's voice. Who, me? Well, that is simple to answer. Nezu's cheerful voice answered before a twisted anger tone seemed to creep in. Humans like you disgust me, Nezu's voice sounded from the speaker in front of him. Humans like you don't care about who they hurt to get their way. The way you saw your own family was the way the scientists saw me. Not alive, not worthy of any rights, only as an experiment to play with. Shut up, you have no right to defend yourself for what you did to them. What you did to your children was unforgivable. What you did to get them was unbelievable. And the way you obtained your wife is inexcusable. Nezu continued as he prepared each and every one of his machines to attack on full. Your therapist had informed me of what you tried to excuse yourself with. You think that excuse will help you. I did it to make them stronger. Bullshit. You did it for your own personable, petty, one-sided rivalry between All Might. No matter what you say, it won't dig you out of the hole that you put yourself in. And now it is time for me to have some fun and play with you. Silly excuse for a hero, try to survive. Come on, Endeavor, I want to play a game, Nezu added before he started the first obstacle. Enji's eyes widened as a large object casted a huge shadow that covered his own very quickly. He gritted his teeth as his eyes shrieked upon seeing what he was up against. Nezu's sadistic smile only grew as he peeked at a sweat drop rolling down his victim's face. With the most satisfying laugh, he started up the first punishing machine that he created, his own design. Enji was taken away in stronger quirk-resistant cuffs to his new home in jail. The officers noticed how cheerful Nezu waved at the former pro-hero's back. The man in question seemed to be quite shaken at what happened inside the area. His face was frozen into a panicked look with his skin paled and eyes looked frustratingly scared. Hey Papa, are you done having fun? Izuku questioned before his father scooped him up slightly off the ground into a hug. I'm done with my work, but the only fun I have is playing with you, my little mouse. Izuku giggled as his father tickled his neck with his fuzzy paw. Yes, Nezu surely didn't enjoy the punishment as much as he thought he would. He only regrets that he didn't ask for more time. Oh well, at least the time can be spent spending time with his most favorite human in the whole world. Izuku smiled as he touched his forehead to his father's. This is what he cared most for, the moments he spent with his beloved son. Settling in. Nezu, of course, took care of all the necessities for the family, the Fukuyama family. They no longer had to go by Todoroki since the trash receptacle himself was no longer their puppet master. Nezu helped Rei take the cold traditional house and sell it for a warm, modern home for them. Nezu recommended one 4-bedroom apartment that was in the same protective building that he lived in, just a few floors down. It was more welcoming than the other house, and it would allow for Nezu to watch over them while keeping a distance. And now with their recent move. Catch me if you can, Izuku yelled out in excitement as he raced past his father. Okay, Shoto called out after him, running to catch up with the speedy toddler. It allowed the two families to come together for play dates whenever. Rei laughed as she watched her youngest run after his friend. Be careful, Shoto. I will, Mama, Shoto exclaimed with his hand outstretched to almost catch his friend. I'm quite delighted to see how this situation turned out, Nezu said with a smile on his face, sipping the tea Ms. Fukuyama made. This is delicious, he complimented her. Thank you, she replied with her own gentle smile, her hair getting braided by her daughter Fayumi. Hey, Taoya greeted, standing next to the principal. Yes, Nezu asked. Taoya breathed out before grinning. Thanks, you are the first and only person to help us out. I figured no one would listen since he was a pro-hero, but you did. You helped me and my family get out of there. No need to thank me, that is what real heroes do. Nezu responded, emphasizing the real, and besides, you acted as your own family's hero too. Really, how? Taoya asked, turning around for a moment to see his little brother running behind him. You approached me to talk about your situation. It takes a lot of guts to actually stand up and protect. I had a suspicion, but it wasn't confirmed until after you confronted me on it. You should be proud of the true heroism you showed to protect your family. Nezu explained as he watched his son hide from the young Shoto behind a tree before scaring him by peeking his head out. Taoya coughed, trying to draw attention away to his cheeks going red at the praise. Thank you. Nezu smiled almost fondly at the young teen. You are welcome. Got ya, Shu-chan, Izuku said loudly, hugging his friend around the waist. Ah, Shoto sighed when Izuku hugged him, blushing at the affection of his best friend. You did. All right, hug time, Natsuo shouted, ganging up in the two younger boys to hug them tight to him in excitement. Oh, Fayumi mumbled before walking fast to them hug, joining the warm comfort. Yay, group hug, Izuku shouted in glee, waving down Taoya and Rei to join the hug. The two looked at each other and shrugged. They couldn't say no to the little guy. While they approached, Izuku looked at his dad. Come on, Papa. Oh, all right, little mouse, Nezu responded, traveling through the grass to join the hug that his son had initiated. Hey, Mom, Taoya asked, approaching his mother who was in the kitchen, chopping up ingredients for a soup she was preparing. His mother glanced over to him, pausing in her chopping. Yes, Taoya. Taoya breathed out and asked, Can I get my hair dyed? I just don't want to look like him. It's bad enough that my Quirk. Shush, there's nothing wrong with you or you Quirk, honey. You Quirk is very strong, Rei responded. But I keep hurting myself because my body can handle it, Taoya agreed back. Then, Nezu can possibly help us contact someone to help your body get used to the flames, or make your body more accustomed to it. I'm sure we can find a way to work around that, Rei explained, taking a knife and chopping up the last small pepper for the dinner she was making. That doesn't help that I look like his replica, Taoya started to say before his mother shook her head in disagreement. Rei interrupted him by grasping his shoulders gently. You don't. You look like my son. If you want your hair dyed, I have no problem with it. Really? Taoya asked, moving his hand to touch his fiery red hair. Yes, really, but you have to wait for piercings until you are well into high school, mister. Rei wagged her finger with a smile. Taoya laughed at that rule of piercings and nodded. Thanks, Mom. Taoya replied gratefully, allowing himself to be pulled into a hug by his mother. They both swayed in the embrace in the middle of the kitchen. For once, he didn't feel cold at the atmosphere or the burning sensation through his body. He just felt his mother's warmth. This is what he was missing his life in that forsaken house. I love this bed, it's so comfy, and this pillow, oh, it's so soft, Natsuo said, admiring his own room with Fayumi sitting in his desk watching him gush over everything. I'm glad, Fayumi smiled. Natsuo tilted his head. You're glad that our beds are comfy. She laughed at his question. Well, yes, and that all of us are safe. Yeah, me too. Now we can play with each other whenever we want. No more training, no more staying up in our rooms all day, and no more boredom. We can all have fun, Natsuo explained with his eyes shining in happiness. We can finally have a family game night or a movie night like happy normal families do. Yeah, we can, and nothing can stop us from doing that, Fayumi said, making her brother cheer. She laughed at his outgoing behavior before they both got called down for dinner. Shoto ate his soup, happily swinging his legs from his high-seated chair. He just finished a play date with Izuku, and he was absolutely starving for his mother's home-cooked meal. The family ate together with chatter around the table about everyone's day in the comfortable apartment while Shoto focused on the yummy food. Hey Mom, Fayumi asked. Yes, Rei answered back. Natsuo smiled. Can we watch a movie tonight? Rei thought about it while she answered back. We can, but I don't know where we'll find a movie to rent. I don't have any movies for the television. Knock knock. Rei looked back towards the front door. She wondered who that might be before peeking through the peephole. She was surprised to see Nezu and Izuku standing outside with something in their hands. Hello, she asked, opening the door. I believe it is movie night, Nezu asked, holding hands with an excited Izuku. Movie? Izuku cheered with some of his favorite animated movies in his hands. Oh well, would you look at that, she whispered, letting the two into her new home. She was locking the door when she heard the excited cheers from her children. She smiled before turning around. She was so glad everything turned out okay. Here comes the sadness. Izuku, Shoto, and Tenya were all having a splendid play date at Nezu's apartment, with Nezu watching over them as well as Tensei and Taoya. Rei was watching over her other children, allowing Taoya to step up as a big protective brother to his youngest sibling. Tensei had the day off from his daily trail to spend more time with his little brother, especially because of Tenya's new development. "I have a quirk, my legs have engines now," Tenya exclaimed happily, showing off his engine ports jutting out from his calves. Izuku gasped in wonder, "Wow, that's so awesome. It's kind of like Uncle Tensei, but it's on your legs." Tenya nodded, growing a grin on his face. "I know, now I can be more like my brother and be a hero just like him." "I can't wait until I get my quirk." Izuku pumped his fists, excitedly filled with anticipation. Shoto commented, "Me too." "Shoto, you already got your quirk," Taoya interrupted with a gentle reminder. "Remember, you had both of your sides lit up at dinner a few days ago." "Oh," Shoto retorted, "I forgot about that." "Oh really?" Izuku exclaimed. "Can I see?" Shoto nodded before showing Izuku his left hand with a small flame and his right hand with a small icicle forming. Izuku's eyes brightened. "Wow, that's so cool, it's so pretty." Thanks," Shoto answered back, a small blush forming on his cheeks from the praise. His older brother snickered behind him. "Nezu brought up some new for his son. If you want us to go see, we can go talk to Recovery Girl this week to see about your quirk. I'm sure she will be very happy to see you." Izuku smiled. "Yay, I cannot wait until I get my quirk, then I can help Papa." "And we can all be heroes," Shoto offered. Tenya nodded. "Yes, and we could be like a trio, working together to stop the mean evildoers." "This is so exciting!" "Ah!" Izuku yelled out happily, making his friend giggle this overwhelming emotion of excitement. Izuku couldn't wait to get the news about his quirk. "I'm sorry, sweetie, your X-ray results came back and they show you to be quirkless." Nezu watched his son's face grow heartbroken as he dropped his Nezu doll onto the floor. Nezu remembers that day that Izuku hot-glued fabric and fluff together to try to make his papa into a plush when he asked. His son said that he wanted to have mercy of his father so he can support him. Nezu thought it was adorable, and that day he explained that Izuku already supports him by being the best son he could ever have. He also remembers that Izuku did the same with Eraserhead since the underground hero didn't make any merchandise at all, so Izuku constructed and painted a long piece of glaze to act as the scarf he always wears. Safe to say, Aizawa was blushing so badly that Izuku thought he was affected by a quirk to turn him into a tomato. Nezu was thankful that Recovery Girl broke it to him softly, since he knew that any doctor would do just the opposite. They would have probably crushed his dreams very harshly, but he was still upset that Izuku's heart was broken. After Recovery Girl gave him reassurance that everything was going to be okay and gave him some gummy bears, Nezu patted Izuku's back to calm his sadness. Nezu prompted, "Cheer up, little mouse. Everything will be perfectly all right, trust me." But Izuku didn't say a word back, just slightly nodded to his words, barely acknowledging what he was saying. Izuku clutched his handmade plush closer to him on the way back to their home. Nezu watched as Izuku sulked to his room. His emotions felt like they were infecting the air in the room. Nezu immediately grabbed his phone when Izuku closed the door to his room. He needs reassurance and support more than anything right now, so time to call in the rest of the family. "Hello, it's Izuku, come as fast as you can. He needs hugs," Nezu said, straight and to the point to the person on the other end of the line. Nezu continued to make calls to everyone that could help bring Izuku back into a better mood. Heaven only knows how much reinforcement Izuku needs right now. About 5 minutes after his last call, the doorbell rang, followed by a series of different placed knocks against the wood. Nezu opened the door to his relatively new neighbors, the Fukuyama family, who were standing outside the door slightly breathless. "Elevator was taking too long. How is he? Where is he?" Rei asked, letting her children slip past her into the house. "Izuku. He is in his room right now. Knock before you go in. He isn't having a good day, so just your presence will cheer him up," Nezu responded back to the youngest. Shoto nodded with a determined look before marching over to Izuku's room to comfort his friend. Taoya stood with Natsuo and Fayumi, slowly venturing into the room when Shoto was granted access. About 10 minutes after their arrival, Izuku agreed to move out from his room into the living room to get more air. Izuku sat on the couch between Tauya and Shoto while still holding onto his plush for dear life. Then the doorbell rang, which opened up to a frantic Present Mic dragging behind Eraserhead with Midnight right behind them. "We heard the news," Midnight greeted, taking off her heels in a hurry to rush to wherever Izuku needed the comforting hug. Present Mic looked at Izuku's bedroom before turning to Nezu. "Is my little listener all right? Where is?" By the time they got the answer of where Izuku was, Eraserhead had already claimed him in a hug. Too slow, Eraserhead mouthed to his friends, patting Izuku's back while he started to calm down from his sadness. When they all settled down, Tenya showed up finally with an out-of-breath Tensei. "Traffic was a nightmare, so I just ran here. Hugh, I took the stairs too," Tensei wheezed out, taking a bottle of refreshing grape juice from his former principal. Tenya rushed over to where Shoto was sitting to also support his friend. "Izuku, I'm here to embrace you and hug." Izuku sniffed. "I like hugs." Tenya made sure to give a good, bear hug to one of his best friends. Shoto joined in for the group hug. It wasn't until several more minutes of unending quiet support from his close friends and family was Izuku finally ready to start crying. "I'm sorry," Izuku cried out, tears unleashing from his eyes. Fayumi reached over to give him a tissue. She was prepared if something like this were to happen. "What?" Tenya questioned. "Why are you sorry?" Shoto asked, tilting his head. Tauya placed a hand on his shoulder, not knowing what Izuku's news will be. Izuku cried into his plush, burying his face in the fabric. "I don't have a quirk now. I don't know if we can be a trio." "What do you mean? Of course you can still be a trio," Midnight gently replied to him, brushing her hand through his curls to calm his tears. Izuku sniffled, tears running down his cheeks. He turned to his papa, the one he looked up to the most. "Can I still be a hero without one? Can I still be a hero like you?" Nezu's eyes softened at his son's honest question. "Indeed, of course you can." Izuku's tears started to slow down. "Really, I can." "Yeah, all you need is the right training and teaching to become one, and you need to work your hardest," Present Mic encouraged, Natsuo nodding enthusiastically with his words. "That means we can still be a trio?" Tenya asked before Izuku could. "Yes, and I can teach you guys the speedy skills of being a hero. Midnight can teach you three about what you can do for your costumes," Tensei states, growing excited at the incoming future plans. "I will teach you about self-defense and support items, and Mike can teach you guys more skills on long-reach attacks," Eraserhead explained, making Izuku's eye light up in hope. Nezu smiled. "And I can teach you three one of the most important skills, strategy. I will focus on instructing on how to fight with a plan in mind that will bring down the villains more easily." Izuku's tears dried up at last with a small sniffle. Shoto bumped shoulders with him, making a giggle erupt from his throat. Nezu smiled as everyone clamored around, talking about what they could do in the future to help the trio become heroes. Tauya watched with a smile as his little brother grew a little more out of his shy shell. Rei leaned Fayumi and Natsuo's heads towards her in a slight hug, while the three best friends laughed at each other when Eraserhead wrapped Present Mic up in his scarf for screaming next to his ear. Nezu smiled, coming closer to rest his paw on his son's shoulder. He would give up the world to have this moment last forever. "I made it more angst and longer than before." Nezu opened his eyes, expecting to see the cool light blue of his bedroom ceiling, but instead he opened his eyelids up to the white metal above his head. Confused, he slowly sat up only to freeze upon realizing where he was. He looked around to find himself back in the cage, the horrid cage from all those years ago, the cage that the human scientists forced him in to run tests, the place that he burned to the ground after he escaped. Why is he here? He looked down at his uncovered feet, studying the blinding white floor of the cage they forced him into. The familiar coldness felt horrible against his bare paws. Why is he back here? He escaped. His body froze up. The fear started to creep up his throat when he started to hear murmurs coming closer to where he was. He should be back here. Ready the next test subject, a jumbled voice mumbled right by his cage. Nezu's ears flickered at where the sound was coming from. Slowly, he turned his gaze in order to not alert the scientists that he was awake. If he was awake, they would begin the test straight away. Nezu's pupils shrank when his gaze drifted to the small body that one of the scientists was holding. The small body of a boy with curly green hair. Nezu's breath got caught in his throat. The scientists must have recaptured him and Izuku. What were they planning? He thought they were dead. They can't possibly be back. Are these scientists new? Did they kidnap him and his adopted son right as his life was starting to calm down? His claws dug into his furry arm. Slowly, he approached the cage wall, not making a sound so he could creep up on them. Nezu's gaze locked on to where they were strapping a sleeping Izuku to a table with leather straps to hold his feet and hands back. Izuku slowly started to come back to consciousness. His tried-treen eyes immediately shot open to the scientists surrounding him. Nezu locked eyes with him right as the scientists held him down by his restraints. "What?" "Quiet," one of the scientists said, moving past Nezu's cage. His voice seemed muddled despite Izuku's voice coming out clearly. "It seems the new test subject has woken up. No matter, it will just make the procedure a little less bearable." Izuku looked so scared, tied down to the table. He moved his limbs, trying to escape, but the strong grip of the other scientists wouldn't let him move more than an inch. His terrified gaze met Nezu's once again. "Papa?" Nezu shook himself out of his frozen state, immediately trying to pick the lock on his cage while the scientists were distracted. His tiny claws scarred against the metal. He pounded in the cage while the main scientists took a hold of a syringe. "No, don't you dare," Nezu called out. His normal soft voice called out strongly in the quiet room. The scientist came closer to a struggling Izuku who continued to call out for Nezu. The scientist's grin grew almost 5 sizes as he came closer to Izuku with the giant needle. Nezu just got his cage unlocked when Izuku screamed out in the most haunting way. His scream echoed towards Nezu, who clenched his paws tightly together from the sound. Izuku called out desperately, "Papa." Nezu woke up in a cold sweat with the feeling of tugging at his shirt sleeve. He looked down frantically to see his son at his bedside. Izuku had a worried expression on his face that seemed to deflate slightly when he had woken up. Nezu questioned Izuku, "Where did you?" "The secret closet door." Izuku started simply, crawling up next to his father with some difficulty with the large mattress. Nezu shifted over to give him some space on the comfortable memory foam mattress. "I heard you making sad noises. Were you having a bad dream?" "More like a nightmare," Nezu responded. His expression remained calm, so he didn't worry Izuku even though all he felt was dread. If people discovered that Izuku was his son, would his nightmare become true? Would Izuku be taken away from him? He would never allow that to happen. Nobody would get away with trying to hurt his son. "Oh, are you better now, Papa?" Izuku asked, raising his head to meet Nezu's soft gaze. Nezu smiled, holding his son closer to him. "Better now, little mouse, thanks to you." Papa Nezu to the rescue. Izuku was at the age where he could attend elementary school and learn with other children. Nezu was dreading the day when he could no longer keep Izuku inside his office to watch after him. He originally thought of just tutoring him on his own, but thought of the isolation it might give Izuku. He wanted Izuku to reach out and make connections through new friends, even though it broke his heart to not have him by his side. So he simply decided on a close-by elementary school with good reviews from parents. He enlisted Eraserhead to sign Izuku up as his guardian since he didn't want to intimidate the school just yet. He signed Izuku up as Midoriya Izuku since with some past searching his family name was Midoriya. "But I'm going to miss you, Papa," Izuku whined, holding onto his papa's hand as Nezu walked Izuku to the front of the UA steps for Aizawa to trade off. Nezu smiled at him. "I will too, little mouse. But don't worry, the school day doesn't last as long as you think it does. Before you know it, you will be back with me at UA." "Promise?" Izuku asked, his eyes filled with stars. "I promise. Now try to make new friends at this school and just be yourself," Nezu added. Izuku smiled brightly. "Okay, Papa, love you." "Love you as well," Nezu responded, waving as he watched his son being escorted by a casual-dressed Aizawa. "Come on, kid," Aizawa replied fondly, taking a hold of Izuku's hand to walk with him to his new school. Izuku grinned and took his uncle's hand. He was sad to be separated from his father, but was very excited to make new friends. The hours didn't seem to fly by fast enough for Nezu since all he did in his office was wonder about how Izuku was doing in his new school. He kept getting a feeling like he should have just went with his original idea, but he waved it off as the parental separation anxiety kicking in. It took many hours before Nezu was free to go back to reclaim his son from Uncle Aizawa at the front of UA. But Nezu was worried since Izuku was acting very quiet. He would have been smiling and jumping around by now since he was a little ball of energy. Why does he look so down? Bye-bye, Uncle Zawa, Izuku said, waving before heading inside without waiting for his papa. Nezu looked back towards his son in confusion before turning back to Aizawa. What happened? Aizawa looked at him with a look of worry behind his tired eyes. I have no idea. Izuku has been acting strangely since I picked him up. Something might have happened in the school. I tried to start a conversation when we were walking back, but he only nodded and replied in very short answers like he wasn't really paying attention to what I asked. Strange, I'll go ask him about what's happening, Nezu replied. Good, I'll head out for my early patrol. See you, Aizawa responded, looking very worried. Yes, see you, Nezu replied, waving off his past student before going inside to check on his son. When he walked in, however, he was greeted by Taoya, who looked very concerned. Hey, what happened to Izuku? Taoya asked, the concern in his eyes shining through his pupils. Nezu shrugged. I have no clue, but I have a hunch that something bad must have happened. Why do you ask? Well, when I said hello, he kind of did something. He was acting like he was hiding something, like a bruise or a cut on his arm, like... What? Nezu questioned. Taoya looked off to the side to see if anyone was listening to their conversation before leaning in, was acting like Shoto did when we were still in the care of that asshole. Nezu's eyes seemed to flare up when Taoya looked into them. He almost stepped back when the energy of hatred that Nezu seemed to put out almost immediately after he said that. Oh, really? Then, that won't do now, will it? I'll go talk to Izuku before heading over to that elementary school to give them a piece of my mind if that is truly the case. Nezu walked past the hallways, much to the fear of the students from the sadistic look in his eyes as he planned a very serious lawsuit against a school. Izuku, he called out, smiling as he opened his office. His sadistic anger vanished when he heard his son's sobs coming from his office desk. He walked over to his desk only to bend down when he saw his young son curled up under the desk crying his eyes out. Little mouse, Nezu asked, trying to comfort Izuku's cries. Izuku mumbled between sobs, I don't want to go back, I want to stay here. Can I just stay here, Papa? Nezu looked at Izuku softly. Izuku, what happened? Tell me, please. Izuku sniffled and began to recount his day. After Uncle Zawa dropped me off, the teacher asked us to introduce ourselves. Each kid told their name, quirk, and what they wanted to be when they grew up. Nezu nodded, wiping Izuku's face with a tissue. When it got to me, I was just being myself like you told me. Hey, I'm Midoriya Izuku, I'm quirkless and I want to be a hero. They all laughed, everyone, even the teachers. When I told them I wasn't joking, their attitude changed. The teachers didn't believe me when another kid lied about me stealing their pencil and made me go in timeout. They didn't let me go to recess after one of the kids hurt my arm. When I tried to tell them that the other kid hurt me, they brushed me off and said I was lying. I wasn't lying, Izuku sobbed. The kids kept telling me how I couldn't be a hero since I had no quirk. They kept pushing me, teasing me about becoming a hero's punching bag and lying about me to the teachers. Please don't make me go back, Izuku pleaded. You won't go back ever again to that school. You know why? Nezu asked his son, who started to calm down from his sniffling. Why? Izuku looked up to his father, who started to smile back at him. I'll just teach you here, right here in UA, Nezu explained proudly. Really? Izuku asked excitedly. Yes, you won't ever have to go back to normal school if you don't want to. And if you do, I will just set you up in the same one Iida is enrolled in so he can protect you if you wished for when you grow up. Nezu answered back before Izuku stopped him from saying anything further by hugging onto him. Yay, Papa can teach me, Izuku cheered. Yes, I can begin teaching you as soon as next week. Why until next week? Izuku questioned, tilting his head as Nezu placed him down as he started a cartoon movie in a small television he set up just for Izuku. Oh, because Papa has some business to attend to make sure certain people sorry for a bad deed that have caused. Nezu answered, exiting out of his office to go directly to the school to give them a piece of his mind. Don't worry, I have Taoya to come watch over you in just a moment. Nezu walked fast down the first-year hallway to arrive at the class Taoya was in. Fukuyama Taoya, report to my office immediately. Nezu, the teacher questioned as Taoya stood up quickly to get to his office. He is excused, Nezu reported to the teacher before he moved his attention to the first-year teenager with his dyed black and purple hair. I'm going out for a bit to have a word with that school. You watch over Izuku while I'm gone, Nezu whispered to him in the hallway. Right, go kick some ass, Taoya commented with it, walking off in the direction Izuku was in. Oh please, they will wish they had no behind after I'm done with them, Nezu answered back threateningly as he strutted right outside to get to his car. When Nezu showed up to the school office after all the children went home, every employee was shocked he was there. Nezu, principal of UA, why are you here? The secretary asked with widened eyes. Her little antennas were straight up. To talk with the principal of this establishment on recent matters concerning why my son exactly came home crying. Why you have a son? Nezu smiled sadistically as the teachers all looked scared. Oh yes, Midoriya Izuku. Ring a bell to anyone here? He was signed in by someone else. Yes, me being his father was certain to bring more attention than I ever wanted for him. I wanted him to have an honest experience with the public, Nezu responded before the look in his eyes turned dark when one of the teachers paled at hearing the name. It seems it was my mistake to trust just anybody, teacher or not, with taking care of my son. The principal came out of his office from the ruckus outside only to freeze up when he saw the ever-threatening look on Nezu's face. Before the principal could say anything, Nezu slammed down lawsuit papers on the table. This is my official statement. I'm suing you for what you have done to my son. These papers list down everything from bullying to discrimination to a restraining order on every single person here to stay far away from me and my son ever again. I will see all of you in court, Nezu said, walking off after successfully seeing the principal look as if he soiled his pants. For the next week between being the principal of UA and a father, Nezu was going to the courthouse to see what was the right punishment for the school. In his eyes, it was simple. Getting rid of everyone. The school wasn't the problem, the people in it was the issue. So each person was fired from their positions to never teach again in that school or anyone in that area. The only way for them to teach again is by going to a sort of rehab program that teaches them to respect, stop bullying and discrimination, and more. The program made sure that they understand the meaning of their bad ways by going into very tough learning practices. They also had to renew their teaching licenses after all of that if they ever wanted to step foot into a classroom again. The school was under new management by people who Nezu personally picked out from multiple colleges across the country. He made sure they had good views on the world and absolutely made sure that they dealt with bullying when they first see it. The children who hurt his precious Izuku also got a talking to from him and their parents for exactly what they did. The families got restraining orders as well, just in case. Nezu walked into his office after a long day of court work to find Taoya hanging out with Izuku. He looked even closer to find they were both napping on the chair. He smiled at the two, happy that they were more comfortable with their new life. Taoya has his family finally happy and Izuku didn't have to get hurt by discrimination. That reminds Nezu, he should start a quirkless anti-bullying and discrimination type of charity to help people like Izuku grow up safely. What is the most important thing to do if you are a hero in a rescue situation? Nezu asked, holding up a picture of a hero next to a burning building. Saving the people who need help and making sure they are okay with a medic or emergency responders, Izuku replied quickly. Nezu nodded, correct. Now what is 12 multiplied by 6? 72, Izuku answered hesitantly. Right, Nezu congratulated before moving on to the next problem. It has only been a few weeks since Nezu had taken Izuku out of that wretched elementary school and began teaching him in his office and sometimes at home. Nezu wouldn't have it any other way. Nezu smiled as Izuku continued his work in his little notebook when Nezu switched over to his next topic that he thought Izuku would be the most interested in. So how do you feel about analyzing some quirks? Nezu asked. Yeah, Izuku looked excited when Nezu places a composition notebook into his hands. Journal No. 1 written on the cover. Halloween. Nezu grinned as he fixed his tie in the mirror. Papa, Izuku yelled out in greeting before entering through the open bathroom door. Nezu looked over and hid his little laugh behind his paw. Izuku was dressed like him. Izuku was wearing a little suit that resembled his uncannily. His fluffy hair was pulled up under his little bear-like ears. He had little gloves on to represent his paws and a short tail sticking out of the bottom end of his trousers. "Hello, little mouse, are you ready to go?" Nezu asked. "Yeah," Izuku replied excited. Nezu ruffled his curly floof before turning back to the doorway. "I was born ready for this," Taoya added, poking his head out to reveal his own look for the night. Taoya decided on being a male version of Sally with his skin covered in green and stitches all around. He wore patchwork clothes just like Sally with the repeated pattern of the cloth. "I'm ready for the candy," Natsuo exclaimed. He wore a costume similar to the movie character Beetlejuice. His black and white striped suit was perfectly tailored. His eyes were surrounded by dark eyeshadow around his eyes and a grin to complete the look. His white hair was smothered in green dye from temporary green hair dye spray made for Halloween. "What time are we heading out?" Fayumi questioned, fixing her skirt. She was dressed like a fairy or like an elf. She had ear accessories on to make her ears pointy at the ear. She wore a light pale blue kimono dress, her hair cascading down in curls from her bun. Her neck was adorned with a faux crystal choker that hangs down the front of her dress. Her shoes were simple platform sandals that were actually really comfortable to wear. Shoto hummed, appearing out from his elder sister's legs. He was dressed like a little angel and devil cross. His white side had a little halo cocked to the side of his head. His right side had on silver and white colored clothes all the way down to his white sneakers. His left side had a dark maroon horn on his forehead. He had on dark red and black clothes all the way down to his black sneakers. "All ready in my end, and I can only imagine everyone else is ready." "Yes," the 5 voices of the children rang out to him. Shoto and Izuku giggled, Izuku rushing over to him to stand by him. Nezu hummed, "All right, everyone report to the living room so I can make sure everything is in order before we venture out." The children all headed to spend time in his apartment den while Nezu got to work making sure the lights were off and other necessities, making sure the security system will protect everything inside while he was away. With a nod, he shut his bedroom door with Rei's car keys in hand. He wanted her to relax for the night, so he promised to take her kids out trick-or-treating with him and Izuku. She ended up giving him her car keys since her car could actually handle the amount of children. "All set, let's head out everyone. I have quite the evening landed," Nezu said while he led them out the front door, locking it after Izuku came through last. "What do you have planned?" Fayumi asked as she buckled her seatbelt in her mother's minivan that Nezu was getting ready to drive. Nezu had Power Loader make an adaptable booster seat to reach the pedals and steering wheel of every vehicle. Nezu explained, "I'm going to visit some heroes in the area not that far away. We will visit some companies or houses of many hero colleagues I have. Some you may already know." Eraser tiredly opened his door to the faces of the children. He rubbed his eyes and got out the assorted candies he got earlier that day since he knew Nezu would probably do something like this. He never really gave out candy to trick-or-treaters, but he will give an exception to them. Before they left, Izuku gave him a hug which was gladly reciprocated. Tensei opened the door wide excitedly with Tenya dressed up beside him. Tenya hugged his friends Shoto and Izuku before going back to his brother's side. He was dressed just like his brother in their hero suit. Tensei handed over licorice whips into their bags with a huge smile. Midnight answered the door in a sweater dress very happily since she gets to see her little honorary nephews and niece. She gave them a whole bunch of random candies with little plastic toys as well. Present Mike was just finishing up his spooky hour at the radio station when they came. He just dressed casually when they came in the front door. Safe to say, he was excited to see them there. He hugged Shoto and Izuku to spin them around before handing them a bunch of crunchy candies. Snipe was in his usual cowboy get-up when he greeted them at his door. Vlad King opened the doors of his company in a very vampiric cape. He gruffest before giving out the children multiple types chocolate candies. Ectoplasm opened up the door in his hero's suit because he recently returned from his patrol about 20 minutes ago, but he hasn't changed out of suit just yet. He gave the children a few full-size bars to spoil them since he didn't get many trick-or-treaters in near his apartment. Cementos opened the door to his house, smiling calmly at the group. He handed out many assorted treats like fruit-flavored candies. Recovery Girl answered the door with a yawn before smiling at the happy children who came to visit her. She had just arrived back from the children's hospital from visiting the sick to speed up their healing process before reading them a spooky story. Thankfully, she had plenty enough gummy bears left over from her visit for the children. After that, Nezu took to some suburban areas to hit up some civilians' homes that were in safe neighborhoods. While visiting some doors, the people confused him for a children from his height and gave him candy as well. He received the candy slightly miffed since they couldn't tell he was an adult, but he wasn't that mad since he got free candy out of the deal. When the night was getting less young and the young children looked tired, Nezu decided it was time to head back. Tauya grabbed onto Natsuo as Fayumi grabbed Shoto. Nezu led back Izuku to the car by holding his hand the entire way. With all the children accounted for, Nezu took back to his apartment to teach the kids about trading. So we can just trade one candy for the other. Yes, you see, if you don't like a candy but another person does, you can simply switch for a candy you like better, as long as both parties agree to it. But the bigger the candy, the bigger the trade. For example, a full-size candy bar is worth 3 fun-size bars. A fair trading deal, and you can decline the trade deal if you don't think it's fair or want to keep your candy to yourself. Okay, got it, Fayumi, I trade you these candy corn bags if you give me your sour gummies, Natsuo offered, holding up 3 bags of his candy corn. Fayumi nodded quickly. You got a deal. Fayumi grabbed her mini bags of sour gummies and switched them for the bags of candy corn. Izuku suggested, holding up a saltwater taffy. Shoto, can I have your spider ring and then you can have my taffy? Shoto nodded, placing the spider ring on Izuku's finger before plopping the taffy into his mouth. He smiled when he tasted the sweet strawberry flavor that the taffy had. So the trading continued, with Nezu giving his own advice during some parts when the children didn't know what to trade for something. Tauya ended up trading away his chocolate taffy to Fayumi for her cinnamon candies. Shoto traded his licorice to Natsuo for some more saltwater taffies. Izuku offered 2 of his regular lollipops for a gumball-centered lollipop. With the trading confusing, Nezu set up the futons in the living room for the children's sleepover. While they continued trading, Nezu started heading back to his room when Tauya looked over. What are you going to do? I'm going to go criticize fictional serial killers while I make myself have sugar high from all these candies I acquired, Nezu replied, dragging a sack behind him to his bedroom door. Have a good night, everybody. Oh, this plot is so stupid, Nezu criticized as he dug his hands into the chocolates while he watched the end credits of the movie. There wasn't even any suspense. Anyone could spot that he was the killer from the beginning. Hey Papa, Izuku greeted, popping his curly hair from the side of Nezu's bed. Nezu looked over curiously. Oh yes, what do you need, little mouse? Oh, do you want to trade your full-size Milky Way for my 3 mini Twix? Izuku asked, showing his fun-sized chocolate bars. Nezu smiled. Throw in a licorice whip and I'll call it a deal. Little scenes of Izuku melting pro heroes' hearts. It's safe to say that Izuku was growing up. Nezu can finally understand it now since he was able to carry Izuku in his arms long ago, but now Izuku is almost towering over him in height. He is still young, but Nezu knows he won't be for long. He had been teaching Izuku for many months now since he took him out of school to teach Izuku himself. Of course, the teachers enrolled here also help with Izuku's studies during the day. Nezu looks back over his shoulder to see that Izuku's spot in his office was now more grown up. He still remembers the day he found him and the day he finally had to put his cribs into storage. Ah, is this that sentimental feeling parents get when their offspring is growing up too fast? He feels like he has been having this same feeling for quite a while now. He is growing to get used to the fact that Izuku is growing up. He already made a literal video album from cute security camera moments that he compiled together. He had the first steps, the actual first words, his own freakout over what he thought were his first words, and much more moments. Then he made an actual picture album with cute photos he took of Izuku over the years. He has up to 5 full albums at this point if his memory is accurate. He started on another now too long ago that has the first few pages filled with the kids in their Halloween costumes. He couldn't wait to fill multiple pages up when Izuku opens his Christmas presents. Speaking of, he should get started early. He heard Izuku's laughter from a few rooms down and smiled fondly. He remembered the times that Izuku personally charmed every single member of his staff, and it wasn't just his staff members. When some pro heroes came to talk about certain issues, Izuku would befriend them almost automatically. Goodness, those were some good memories. He actually has the moments in his mini photo albums. Lunch Rush didn't really expect Nezu to have a child when he signed up to be the head cook for the cafeteria. He heard many students talk about a little kid that walked with Nezu around the school with little worksheets in his hand. He couldn't believe it himself when Nezu walked in with his son behind him after all the students had cleared out. "Sir, you didn't tell me you had a son," Lunch Rush stated when he saw the two approach. Nezu tilted his head. "Oh, I apologize, it must have slipped my mind. Lunch Rush, meet Izuku. Little Mouse, meet Lunch Rush. He is the one in charge of the food served at the cafeteria." Izuku gasped, "Is he the one who makes the yummy katsudon?" "Yes, he does," Nezu replied to his son before turning to Lunch Rush. "I gave him your katsudon a while ago, and he loved it very much. I can go ahead and make some more for the little guy if he wants," Lunch Rush offered, tightening his apron. Izuku smiled. "You would, thank you. Katsudon is my favorite food. What's your favorite food?" Lunch Rush smiled as he started to cook the little kid some food as he continued to ramble questions of the pro hero. He did his best to answer all of them, but it was hard since the boy had a tendency to ramble through most of his questions. But once Izuku had tasted his food, Lunch Rush was proud at the grateful smile that Izuku had on his face. The next day, the students watched as their principal sat with his young son in the middle of the cafeteria. They hid their smiles at the cute scene of father and son just eating together with the young boy swinging his legs. Sometimes, Izuku and Nezu were quoting movies to each other to know if they would get the reference. Of course, Izuku was still young and didn't know the kind of movies that Nezu watched, so the quotes were more or less picked from the kid-friendly films. But at times when Nezu wasn't around to play the reference game, Izuku would hum a song he had memorized from one of his favorite movies. In the teacher's lounge, Izuku was humming the song he knew from that one scene with Cinderella cleaning the floors. He was all alone, or so he thought, until he heard a soft voice from one of the cubicles. "Oh, sing, sweet nightingale, sing." Izuku pauses his humming to look back at the cubicles. He could almost see a peak of a brown trench coat from the top of one of them. Curious, he jumped down from the office chair he was in to go investigate who it was. Izuku walked over to see Ectoplasm grading the homework from his class. They both looked at each other before Izuku climbed into one of the seats next to him to continuing humming the song. When Nezu came in a little later, he found the two discussing the third movie of Cinderella and how it was much better than the second one. Snipe gained a soft spot for Izuku quite quickly when Nezu caught them in the middle of a fake cowboy showdown. When Nezu opened the door, Izuku had already landed an imaginary shot which made Snipe fall dramatically to the ground. Izuku laughed hysterically, rushing over to plant himself on top of Snipe to keep him there. He also recalls another moment where Snipe was carrying a laughing Izuku around on his shoulders while he headed to the teacher's lounge. Izuku was laughing as he kept saying how he felt like he was flying. Vlad King's students didn't really know he had a soft spot. He was a very strict teacher who wanted to see the best in his students. He was fairly new, but he still wanted his students to succeed. His students got the shock of their lives when in the middle of their class a small child walked in and sat down in one of the empty seats nearest Vlad King's desk. They thought the child would be escorted out of class or something to that extent. They didn't expect their teacher to hand a little notebook and pencil to the child before continuing on with his lesson. Nezu laughs at the memory of shocked students still talking about the cute little boy in their hero class. Once, Nezu instructed Cementos to help make some new building plans with Power Loader. Izuku added his own doodles to contribute to the plan, which made them both smile at his eagerness to help. They made sure to basically make a show of building for Izuku, who looked so astonished to see something on paper become real life. Recovery Girl enlisted him for his help to become her little assistant for the day. He followed her the whole day after his early lessons to hand out gummies to the students. The students gladly took the candy from the small child in the oversized lab coat before he ran back to Recovery Girl's side each time she walked further ahead. One day, Nezu had to call in Gang Orca to discuss a situation that needed his experience and his vast number of sidekicks to help. He allowed Izuku to sit in for the meeting to tutor him about planning for these types of situations. Gang Orca was a bit hesitant in having a child there since he knew that his appearance earned him a spot on the list of heroes that would be dangerous villains. But his small fear was proven wrong when the small child didn't face him with fear, but only with curiosity. Nezu watched as his son had fun asking the pro hero a lot of questions after their discussion. It was clear the other pro had a soft spot for Izuku, just like the rest of the people who he meets. He could see the pro-hero hesitancy at the beginning of the meeting loosen up when he saw that Izuku was just a curious mind with a kind heart. Izuku even charmed Best Jeanist later that day when Nezu discussed a meeting with his agency. Best Jeanist ruffled his curls when he had to leave, which made Izuku smile so big. Then the final meeting he had was talking to the Wild Pussycats about new security, but by the end of the meeting, Izuku was made into an honorary kitten. Nezu smiles as he touched his paw over the photo album. The photo on the cover was Izuku's bright face right after he watched one of All Might's fighting scenes. Nezu thought he was going to get replaced with All Might as his son's new favorite hero, but Izuku disagreed. "He might be a good hero, but you are my favorite hero." Izuku smiled up at his father. "Why is that?" Nezu asked softly. Izuku giggles with a happy grin. "You're my papa." Christmas time. Nezu didn't know a lot about human holidays or traditions when he first started living normally. He always wondered why there were certain holidays. Why did American humans celebrate with a grand dinner of Thanksgiving right before the horrifying retail peril known as Black Friday? It took more learning about human holidays from several reliable sources when he figured out the main root of celebration was most of the time because of a sense of family and love. He didn't know that he would have been celebrating these holidays until he got the best gift of the world a few years ago. His son, Izuku. Izuku brought more light into his world than he first realized. And for these past years, they would decorate for holidays together, especially Christmas. He would allow Izuku to hang the little star on their small tree each year when they were done hanging up the ornaments. The ornaments ranged from little arts and craft ones that Izuku made or special ones that Nezu would buy himself. His favorite was a photograph in a snow globe that he always set in the middle of the tree. The snow globe itself was durable, biodegradable material that wouldn't break if it ever fell from the tree. And for these past years, Nezu was also joined in the festivities by Izuku's growing family. It was Christmas Day. Nezu had invited everyone from young Shoto to Aizawa to join in the fun. He knew that Rei and her 4 children would most definitely arrive first since they were only a floor down from his apartment. Hisashi and Aizawa would arrive at around the same time since they lived close to the other. Kiyama would most likely follow after them a few minutes later because of her patrol time. And lastly, Tensei would arrive with the young Tenya. The doorbell rings right on cue. "Ah, that must be Rei and the young ones. Izuku, would you get the door? I'm busy putting this pie in the oven." Nezu asked his son while he balanced on a step stool to place the blueberry pie into his oven. "I got it, Papa," Izuku replied, running up to the door and opening it wide to welcome in their guests. "Hi, Auntie Rei. Hello, Taoya. Salutations, Natsuo. Greetings, Fayumi. Hey, Shoto." "Yo," Natsuo replied, ruffling Izuku's hair as everyone walked past with their own greetings to get inside. Once everyone was inside, they all received a hug from the happy Izuku. Rei and Fayumi placed their small mountain of gifts under the tree. Taoya teased lightly with a smile. "Oof, you are getting big, squirt." "Nope, you're just getting taller," Izuku responded. Nezu clapped his paws together as he walked up to the group as they set their gifts beside the tree. "Now, welcome everyone. I have a pie in the oven that should be ready as soon as the last guest arrives. Until then, there is a multitude of drinks and food inside the kitchen. Take a plate and place what you can eat on your plate. Enjoy." And just like Nezu predicted, the rest of the guests arrived in the order he said they would, and each one was welcomed by a hugging Izuku. Nezu pulled out the pie right on time as Izuku tackled a laughing Tenya into a tight hug. Tensei laughed as he picked up the two into an ever bigger embrace while Nezu rested the pie on the coffee table in the living room to cool off. "It will be cool enough to eat after dinner," Nezu states, making Natsuo slowly sit back down from his own excitement to devour a piece of that pie. Everyone was sitting in the living room eating their meal. Natsuo was very happy because he was so close to eating the pie. Taoya was sitting next to Shoto, joking around with Fayumi about how Shoto's hair was like a peppermint. In retaliation, Shoto weakly slapped his brother while the latter laughed at his own joke. Fayumi was smiling at her two brothers playing with each other as her mother braided her hair. Nimuri listened as Izuku was telling her about a promising rising hero he saw in an article. Hisashi was sporting his eggnog mustache as he rambled to Aizawa about the radio station. Nezu waited until everyone was full of food before cutting into the blueberry pie for dessert. Natsuo was very satisfied as soon as he took the first bite. With their pie, they all had watched a Christmas special on television. After they finished their dessert and the television special, Nezu brought everyone over to the tree to open their presents. Ray had been given a lot of homemade gifts from her children, including a sign they had painted themselves of their whole family in stick figures. Nimiri had gifted her with an essential oil diffuser. Aizawa had given her a soft blue quilt that had many patterns of snowflakes and lace. Hisashi had given her some CDs about relaxation and meditation. Tensei and Tenya had gifted her with multiple candles with all different kinds of scents. Nezu and Izuku had given her a book of mythology and a book filled with creative poems. Taoya had been given LED strip lights that change color from his mother. He had been given some cozy shorts and sweatpants from Aizawa. His siblings had given him a dark blue skateboard. Nimiri had given him a set of cologne that smelled like a fireplace and slightly of marshmallows. Hisashi gifted him with a black leather-wrapped bracelet and a pair of black headphones. Tensei and Tenya has given him a pair of nice running shoes. Nezu and Izuku gave him a nice leather jacket that had hanging silver chains. Fayumi received a bubble tea kit from her mother, a little jewelry box that had beautiful flowers illustrated on the sides of the wood from Hisashi, a soft white blanket from Aizawa. Nimiri had given her a box of rainbow sherbet-scented bath bombs. Tensei and Tenya had given her a beautiful gemstone necklace. Nezu and Izuku had gifted her with a scarf that had a map pattern and a beautiful silver bracelet. Her brothers had ended her night with their own gift of a white lace dress that she had her eyes on for a while. Natsuo has been given a happy robot dog from Tensei and Tenya. He was given 2 huge Lego sets from Nimiri. His mother gave him a ukulele, and his siblings got him a book of sheet music that he could play on his new instrument. Hisashi gave him a magic kit with a sleek black top hat. Aizawa gave him a shark blanket that covered his legs, so it looked like he was being eaten by a cartoon shark. Nezu and Izuku gave him a few games for his handheld game system. Shoto was given a koala onesie from his mother. His siblings gave him a cape that was like All Might's. Tensei and Tenya gave him a cork board for him to hang in his bedroom and a soft memory foam pillow. Aizawa gave him a fluffy red blanket that was very big. It was big enough to wrap him into a burrito. Hisashi gave him a radio that he got signed by All Might. Nimiri gifted him a Squirtle plush with a matching hoodie. Nezu and Izuku gifted him with a book guide about the elements of the earth like snow or ice being part of water. Tensei had been given an astronomy book by his brother, who looked really proud that he bought it himself with his allowance. He was given a huge detailed puzzle from the Fukama family that was 100 pieces. Hisashi gave him a dartboard and a board game. Nimiri gave him a telescope. Aizawa gave him a figure of a vintage knight since his hero suit was based on a knight's armor. Nezu and Izuku gave him a geode lamp that could also portray the constellations on his ceiling. Tenya was given a fast scooter from his older brother who smiled at his brother's excited expression. He was given a remote-controlled drone from Nimiri. Hisashi gave him board games and a deck of playing cards. Aizawa gave him a workout hoodie made of soft material that was breathable. The Fukama family gave him a few books of fictional fantasy with mythical creatures. Nezu and Izuku gave him CDs from a few musicals, and one was from an opera that he might enjoy. Nimiri had been given her favorite perfume from Tensei and Tenya. The Fukama family gave her a skincare kit that had so many items. Aizawa gave her a beautiful amethyst necklace. Hisashi gave her a simple gold necklace with a pearl pendant. Nezu and Izuku gifted her with a book on fashion from one of her favorite designers. Hisashi had been given a large yellow sweater with a parakeet on the front from Aizawa. Tensei and Tenya gave him a personalized pair of headphone headset from his radio station job. Nimiri gave him a relaxing lava lamp for his office. The Fukama family gifted him with a big book about the evolution of music over time and another on the greatest musicians of all time. Nezu and Izuku gave him a working vintage record player with a few records for him to enjoy. Aizawa had been given a handmade knitted gray beanie with matching gloves, a scarf from the Fukama family. He received a yellow blanket with sleeves from Hisashi. Nimiri gifted him a white noise machine that might help him sleep better. Tensei and Tenya gave him a picture frame of all 4 of them from back in their high school days. Nezu and Izuku gave him a massager that could help with his shoulders after a long day of teaching. Izuku had been given an instant camera and big photograph album from the Fukama family. Aizawa had gifted him with a big bean bag plushie that was shaped like a teddy bear. Nimiri had given the young Izuku a collection of figures from his favorite book series. Hisashi gave him a speaker and sound system to play his favorite music. Tensei and Tenya had given him a Bulbasaur plush backpack. Nezu, his father, gave him a large set of books that covered myths and legends, the world before Quirks, and hero society in general. Nezu has been given a handmade tie from Ray, and a sophisticated fountain pen from her children. Tensei and Tenya gave him a classic white mug with almost 20 different types of teas. Aizawa had gifted him a small soft chair that was almost like a bean-bag chair but even more comfortable. Hisashi had given him a vintage quill with ink and a wax seal for him to write very fancy letters. Nimiri gave him a gift certificate for his favorite tailor for a new suit if he wished. Izuku, his son, had made him a painting of their family. One frame was just him and Izuku, but the other contained everyone together from last Christmas. Nezu wouldn't have believed if 10 years ago someone would have said that Nezu had gotten himself a family of humans he trusted. He most likely would have lauded in his face before getting back to his principal duties. But now, with everyone laughing together and smiling, he still couldn't believe it himself. He somehow gained a family, and it all started with a baby in a basket. Izuku smiled, waving over his father. "Hey, Papa, come in a little closer. Tensei is setting up for a photo." "Oh, one moment," Nezu replied softly, scooting closer to his son on his low couch. He watched as everyone gathered around or on the couch as Tensei set up the camera to flash in 10 seconds. "Okay, it's set," Tensei said loudly, walking fast to squeeze in between his younger brother and Miss Ray. "Quick, everyone say cheese." Nezu still didn't understand things about humans and their traditions. "Cheese," everyone yelled as they smiled wide for the camera. But he still had his whole life to learn more. "Yay, did we get it? I didn't blink, did I?" Izuku asked before widening his eyes as he remembered something. "Oh wait, speaking of cameras, I heard there was this journalist guy that can take photos from any part of his body, do you think?" And he still had his whole life to spend time with his son. Izuku meets All Might. Nezu wouldn't say this is the first time he saw small humans attack each other. Izuku said as he landed on the ground. "I'm okay, L." But at least they were doing it under his supervision. Nezu had started to help safely train Izuku, Shoto, and Tenya together. They had just started doing more styles from the basic exercises, and they would slowly work their way up at a steady pace that won't seem forced at all. Nezu had also enlisted the help from some people he trusted. He had Eraserhead start them on the basis of martial arts, Present Mike would advise them on more long-range combat, Ingenium would deal with speed, and Midnight would teach them about future support items. Nezu helped train them in basic before tutoring them on different ways of thinking like a hero. Nezu had a hand in bringing out certain strategies to the children they could use in their future. As for now, the children had a steady-going pace of training that allowed them to have a bit of fun with it. "Tenya, catch!" Shoto called as he shot a ball high into the sky before running down the track to see how far he could go before Tenya came back with the ball. "Got it," Tenya answered back with a yell as he pumped his legs to catch the ball in his hands. The children were growing up so fast they were about 8 years old, which made them taller than him. "I got you," Tenya exclaimed as he tackled Shoto into a hug as he was about to start running back where he came from. They both laughed together while Izuku was focusing really hard on his sit-ups. Izuku was stunned from his exercise with the other two launching themselves on him. They all laughed in the pile before Nezu called out to them. "All right now," Nezu clapped, getting the attention of the taller children. 10-minute break for fruit juice before we go inside to start your tutoring on hero strategies to take down villains in certain situations. "Okay, Papa, come on, Sho-chan, Ten-chan, they have orange juice," Izuku replied. Tenya brightened up. "Yay, that's my favorite." I know, Shode, we have apple juice as well," Nezu said as he walked up to the children. Shoto nodded. "Thank you, Nezu-sensei." Nezu was with his little mouse in his office when the principal reviewed new heroes coming through. Izuku was wearing a light blue shirt with Best Jeanist on it. He had on a pair of blue jeans and his favorite red shoes that were like his father's. Nezu just wore his usual classic suit. Nezu even saw some new of a vigilante that considered himself to be a janitor hero that cleans up the bad guys. The video showed a dark figure with a dirty mop in his hands. "I have cleaned up after a fraternity's chili party followed by a Haribo gummy bear challenge. I do not fear death." And then they proceed to, pardon the pun, clean another's clock, probably also tossing in a line about time to take out the trash, before Nezu switched the article. The Trash Man apparently was his name. He might look more into it after Recovery Girl reported to him the news about the #1 hero's condition. All Might had just gone under extensive surgery from a huge villain fight not that long ago. Night Eye had stayed by his side through the hospital visits to make sure he makes it through. Gran Torino also stayed by to check on All Might's condition. His office phone rang. "Hello, Recovery Girl," Nezu answered cheerfully. "Principal Nezu, could you please come to the hospital wing? All Might is being a bit difficult." "Alrighty, I'll be on my way then," Nezu answered back before hanging up his phone. "Izuku, we are going on a ride." Nezu arrived quickly to the hospital with his son next to him in the passenger seat. It took a few moments to get out of the car before they both walked into the hospital to find out where All Might was to deal with the situation. Sooner than later, Nezu walked with his son silently towards 4 figures further down the hallway. "That's truly reckless, All Might. You should retire," Night Eye said as he stood still a bit away from his partner. "If they are waiting, I have to go," All Might said, hanging onto the wall. "If you keep being a hero in that body for so long, it will just make everyone suffer." Sir Night Eye looked at All Might pleadingly. "You can just have a good rest on a nice bed. Find someone." All Might looked sadder. "I can't. Even if All for One is gone, someone will replace him soon enough." "I understand your theory about being the symbol of peace. I hold on to it in great esteem, but you should rest," Sir Night Eye said. "If you continue like this, then I can't support you." "Didn't I tell you that you didn't have to use your quirk on me?" All Might almost mumbled as he faced his sidekick. "I'm here because I wanted to do something to help you, All Might," Sir Night yelled. "If you continue, you will face an unspeakably gruesome death against a fearsome villain." "I have to keep going to protect them," All Might argued before coughing, leaning his shoulder against the wall. "All Might?" Izuku's small voice asked, bringing the taller adult's attention towards him. Everyone's eyes widened except Recovery Girl's, since she suspected that Nezu might do something like this. "A child?" Night asked with his eyes widened at the small boy. "I figured despite your condition, you needed to hear from the young children that you are protecting. Meet me, little mouse, Izuku," Nezu introduced, extending a paw towards his young son that was taller than him. "Why would you?" Gran Torino asked before Recovery Girl put her arm out to stop him from approaching the scene. "Watch," Recovery Girl ordered. Izuku approached the leaning hero, All Might-san. "Yes," All Might answered back, trying to smile despite his pain. Izuku replied with an honest smile, "You don't have to keep pretending you are okay. It's okay to be human at times instead of the symbol of peace for others." "But I need to keep going for everyone," All Might responded back. Izuku shook his head. "I'm saying that you have support behind you. You have to rest even though you don't want to retire. At least, cut down on the hero work so you can take care of yourself better. Everybody needs to rest sometimes, even you." "But evil never rests," All Might agreed. Izuku shook his head. "Other heroes can take care of the evil while you are taking care of your health. Let yourself rest first. You don't have to do everything. Please, All Might, you don't have to save everyone. You are above else human. Humans need support through their allies and—" Alright, I will take some rest," All Might agreed. "Some much-needed rest," Sir Night Eye whispered. And Izuku asked with a raised brow. All Might mumbled, "And cut down on my hero work hours." "Good, glad we can come to an agreement," Izuku said proudly. Night interjected, "But if he doesn't retire soon, he—" "Who says we can't change the future, sir? Please provide the support he needs." Izuku smiled up at him. Sir Night Eye sighed as he fixed his glasses. "I will continue as long as he doesn't push himself harder than he needs to. And make sure to tell Recovery Girl if he is ruining his diet. She will set him straight," Izuku happily added. "Damn Skippy," Recovery Girl softly confirmed. Nezu clapped while Gran Torino looked shocked. Recovery Girl patted Gran Torino's back as Nezu stepped forward with a grin. "Understood. If that happens, I will just send over a Izuku to deal with it personally." All Might gulped as Izuku's gentle smile became a very sneaky grin. There was no mistaking that this boy was raised by Nezu.